process of sort of getting all the resources together. To ensure quality, you have to have a certain amount of volume, which we won't get here in the mountains. So we're actually working with the Medical Center of Aurora to rotate both doctors and staff through Denver and there. So lots going to be happening in cardiovascular space. Surgical associates, I'm not going to read through all of these. Howard Head, you know about. The Shaw Cancer Center. Does everyone here know that Howard Head is wholly owned by Vail Health? Shaw Cancer Center is wholly owned by Vail Health. I know one you probably didn't know. Eagle Valley Behavioral Health, wholly owned by Vail Health. Deliberately branded as such. I'll come back to in a second. Orthopedics, the Stedman Clinic, the Stedman Philippine Research Institute. Vail Summit Orthopedics is now Vail Summit Orthopedics and Neurosurgery. Great orthopedic surgeons. We have these beautiful mountains, and unfortunately people hurt themselves on it. And the upside, if there's an upside to that, is that it does create enough volume of those types of cases to recruit the number of surgeons that you need to have sort of the world-class care that, from my perspective, was a key component to why I wanted to come here, because it enabled me to continue to be involved in research and training and things that I had done at Hopkins and UPMC and University of Colorado Hospital. Mountain Family Health, you guys know what this is? It's amazing. It's a federally qualified healthcare center. It's located over on our Edwards campus. It's not a wholly owned subsidiary, but we do provide about $400,000 a year in operating subsidy. They really cater to uninsured and Medicaid population, and they wrap around a ton of things related to social care, social determinants of care. You cannot separate behavioral health, physical medicine, and social determinants of care. They're all interrelated. Part of my time at Hopkins, I was overseas working in Singapore. I worked for a little while in Dublin, Ireland, Palermo, Italy, as well as Cyprus. And we were over there in large part because those were socialized models moving towards private. And ironically, we were coming from a private model that's moving towards socialized medicine. The truth is, it's probably somewhere in the middle. When you talk about healthcare in America costing 18% or so of gross domestic product, when every other major developed nation in the world is at 9% or half of it. Yet most of the World Health Organization statistics on quality of life and healthcare, we are about the middle of the pack. So we're paying more than anybody, and we're about mediocre. And don't get me wrong, if you've got cancer or you have to have a transplant, or you have some highly subspecialized need, you don't want to be anywhere other than America. But if you want to stay well, and you want to actually not get sick, if you do get sick, treated the most effective way, you fail. And part of that's because if you also look at our counterparts in other places of the world, wherein we are twice of what they are in terms of spending on healthcare, we're half of what they are in terms of social needs. So it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have shelter and food and job and all the basics, you're probably not managing your insulin because you can't afford healthy eating because you're eating McDonald's. I'm dead serious on it all. And so you got to treat the person holistically. Physical medicine, behavioral health medicine, social issues. And here in the mountains, the real problem is we start to dig apart through Eagle Valley Behavioral Health what's the underlying causes of our crisis, this sort of paradise paradox. If people move here, it's gorgeous, it's amazing, we all have these wonderful feelings over here, yet our suicide rates are off the charts relative to every other place in the world. And what causes it? Of course, everything's blamed on the altitude. Well, altitude affects the dopamine levels. Okay, well, show me the science and I'll buy into it. Or maybe it's because people moved here with the family saying, what the hell are you doing moving to Colorado? You're going to go be a ski bum. When are you going to get your life in order? Maybe it's that they came for another reason and they just don't have family support. And then what they discover when they don't have it is there's not behavioral health providers here to get an appointment with. And then we dig in deep and we say, well, why aren't there behavioral health providers here? It costs so much to live here, they don't pay them enough. And you start to see these are all like a series of Venn diagrams that are all interrelated and overlapping. And so we have to start to think about how we sort of manage these things more holistically. And there's a lot going on, but Mountain Family Health is the safety net. That and Mirror, this bus that drives around to the trailer park in Edwards off Highway 6. Did you guys know that represents 15% population in the county?
Just that one.
Just that one side.
15%.
50. 15. One
No,
five.
okay, I was like,
One
wait.
five.
One five.
Yes. But that is a neighborhood that grossly needs a lot of these services, and they're afraid to come someplace to get them because of ICE. Because some of them are undocumented. They don't want to get on the radar. They want to stay off the grid. This is it, Mobile Intercultural Resource Alliance. We actually gave them this bus. We help market it. We give them the medical care piece that's inside of it. It's an amazing resource. We're already talking about Mirror 2. It opened up last summer, right around the time the Lake Christine fires were going on. It's been a huge success, and there's going to be more to come on how we support that. A lot of people ask us, will you make all this money? You put all this money in reserves. What are you doing with it? I want to make sure you understand what that math is. The $400 million you hear about in reserves, $100 million of it's owed for the tower that's being built. That's a bond that's being spent down, so it's probably $300 million. And then when you talk about the $300 million, you start to say, okay, well, there's $60 million to behavioral health over the next 10 years, and then there's a whole host of other things that we're doing, including supporting Mirror and ultimately Mountain Family Health. But bottom line on it all is, we got to get our rates down to make it more affordable, and we got to figure out ways that we address these broader issues that I just described to you. And thank goodness that the money is there, because it gives us some degrees of freedom to actually now go and give back. And again, one of the reasons I stand before you here today is I needed to have the political backing, which I have from the board, and the financial resources to come in and do some of the things that I'm talking to you about today. We need to spend that money down, put it back into the community. Again, you're going to hear a little bit more from Chris Romer about the plan that we have coming down the pike as well. Healthcare costs, I just talked to you about GDP. Some of the things that we've been doing, we just cut our MRI prices. You know, they used to be close to $2,000. Did you guys ever read the RAND study that came out about cost of healthcare? Talking about commercial insurance stated as a percent of Medicare. Did you read that? Well, if you did, I probably think you're a little bit on the nerdy side. Me, I spent hours and hours and hours reading it, and the fact that it took a RAND study to explain it tells you it's totally broken. Okay? And when we talk about commercial insurance in the context of a percent of Medicare, if you think about the end that is, call it 50,000 people in Eagle River Valley. 47,000 was the official census in 2016, but it's growing, and also you've got undocumented and all the rest of them. We're not counting Western Eagle County, that's really the Roaring Fork Valley. If you look at it across the entire spectrum, there's commercially insured population, government insured, which is like Medicare and Medicaid, stuff with veterans, and then there's the uninsured. Right? State average for uninsured is 6%. The 4 county mountain counties, Eagle, Summit, Garfield, Pickton, 14%. Eagle County, 17%. The worst. Now I come from Mississippi, where we're like last in everything, except for obesity. We got that one, we're number 1. That's a real problem, 17% uninsured. It's a huge problem. And Mirror is going to treat the symptoms of that. But when you dig into it deeper, it comes back into the fact that it's not affordable. People are having to choose between a car and insurance. And they're rolling the dice because they're relatively healthy, but they're not factoring in that they're riding bikes 30 miles an hour down the side of the mountain. And then next thing you know, they have something show up in our ED, they're burdened with this huge bill. Number 1 cause of bankruptcy, inability to pay, personal bankruptcy, inability to pay health care bills. So we're trying to look at a variety of things, including, let's look at the things that people oftentimes have to shop for in order to get the next level of care. So MRIs, $2,000 before. That RAND study I told you about. Valley View and St. Anthony Summit, significantly more expensive than Vail Health. It's in the study, go look at it, I encourage you to. Now, if I took a poll of 100 people, especially down Valley, and said, who's more expensive, Vail Health or Valley View? How many of the 100 would say Vail Health? All of them. Right? And we deserve it because we haven't done a good job of explaining or telling our story. And most importantly, it still needs to come down. St. Anthony Summit was 525% of Medicare. Vail Health came in at just under 300% of Medicare. So what that means is that Medicare at 300% of Medicare, if Medicare pays you $100, commercial insurance is paying $300. Everything you're hearing about, state or public option for insurance, or all of these things that our legislature and the governor are working on, they'll say, oh, it should be more between 175% and 225 in Medicare. Peak Health Alliance, the insurance purchasing collaborative that just took place in Summit County, they agreed to rates at 225 in Medicare. Remember, they were at 525, so that's like cutting it in half. That's what all of this stuff is. So when you hear something about percent of Medicare, it's talking about commercial insurance rates as a percent of Medicare. But I'll come back to that broad population. If 17% are uninsured, and another, say, 23% are government insured, Medicare and Medicaid, then that leaves 60% left over who are commercially insured. And that breaks it out between individual, small group, large group, and then the larger organizations that are self-insured, who oftentimes are going at risk. Does that make some sense? I'm telling you all this not to bore you or to overwhelm you, but to help you make sense of all these things that are going on in our valley, in our state, in our country, and to connect the dots on, well, what the heck is the difference between reinsurance that's supposed to save 30% on the individual market and the public/state option that's saying it'll save 10%? And is that also only in the individual market? Well, what about the small market? Because, of the 1,400 businesses in Eagle River Valley, 80% are 20 employees or less. 80% are 10 employees or less. 90% are 10 employees or less. I said that wrong, but I'm close. Chris, remember that. 90% are 20 employees less, 80% are 10 or less. So they're forced with, do I offer it at all? And if I do, how do I afford it? And if you only push people to the individual exchange and say, I'm out, I'm going to give you a voucher, then you have to deal with other things like high deductibles that the Affordable Care Act doesn't let you get rid of those. So it's a very complicated thing, and we all have to figure it out and educate ourselves so that we can all start working on solutions. Reinsurance, we're paying for a portion of it. We're working with Anthem to come up with lower costs for the small group, since everything that's come out in the legislation, God bless the governor and everybody's doing something for it. But we got to focus on the small group, so we offer them pretty sizable discounts. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it in time for the January 1 go live. I started in January 1 of 19. To have something be effective in January 1 of 2020, it had to be in by March to April, and I was still sort of figuring things out. But it will be in effect for April, because the small group market is the only market where they do every 6 months as opposed to once a year. Et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to read through all this, but these are things that we're working on to try and lower the cost of health care. Eagle Valley Behavioral Health. So this is a wonderful program that included all of these entities plus some. It was a grassroots, ground-up, community-wide effort that says enough is enough. This behavioral health crisis is unbelievable. 25% of all 7th and 8th graders in all the schools in Eagle Valley said they considered suicide. 15% had made a plan. These are not made-up statistics. It's actually alarming. And it made me start thinking, oh, my daughter's raising here, I think it's a better place to grow up. What are the underlying causes? It's got our numbers so significantly higher than even Denver, which is like 43rd in the country. We came up with a variety of different things that we needed to work on. Prevention, this is always going to be the area of focus. Intervention, what happens when, despite your best efforts to prevent, people start to have problems? Treatment, what are we going to do to enhance the number of providers here? Literally, we're hiring 50 more providers. We've already hired 25, 10 of them have started. The rest are en route. Having to supplement their salaries and figuring out where they're going to work. Recovery, what do we do after recovery? So some of the initiatives, cross-functional behavioral health facility. I'm not sure it'll be inpatient. I'm in the process of trying to figure out, do we have enough volume to cost-justify having it? We will definitely have a crisis stabilization unit where you can stay for 2 or 3 nights. Psychiatrists on staff, psychologists, behavioral health therapists, a respite location. You guys know, we probably don't know this if you work in real estate. We acquired the North Star location in Edwards. You guys remember that? Then there was this wonderful article in the Vail Daily about how we did it to run the subway guy out of business. That was like my first thing I got to deal with. And again, we earned it. That's not true, by the way. That's not why we bought it. We bought it because we needed a mid-valley location to co-locate services that are needed from Dotsero back to East Vail. And so, while we have to go through the process of getting all the requisite approvals, the hope and the idea is, how do we put this crisis stabilization unit there? How do we move Mountain Family Health Center there? How do we put Department of Public Health and other Eagle County services? A bus stop that again is not far from that trailer park that's just off Highway 6. And these are all things that are needed, because right now what happens is someone can't get easy access to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Their needs go unmet. Things fester and get worse. They get into crisis mode. They end up in our emergency department, or EMS, ambulance goes and gets them, or law enforcement in some instances. We have to then follow the regs, and we put them in this back room in the ED at Vail Health for 3 days while we try to find placement for them, which oftentimes is Grand Junction or Denver. They ultimately end up coming back to the valley after they've been treated and stabilized, and then unfortunately we've got no warm handoff. We're right back to there's no providers, there's no facility like this, there's no day treatment services, and so what happens? The cycle repeats itself. And by the way, that's extremely costly. Not only is it ineffective, it's extremely costly. So when we talk about lowering the cost of healthcare, and we say, well, we're doing this with behavioral health, this is a big piece of it. This is the 25 already added, the 50 more providers. System coordination, transformation, prevention and education, crisis response, the Hope Center. If you haven't heard of that, it's amazing. School-based services, we're putting all sorts of behavioral health therapists in the schools. If we did it right over a 10-year period, it's somewhere between 121 and 220 million. So we put in 60 million, and then we said we're going to raise another 100 million, and we're trying to use that to stimulate other money, to bring in other grants and things of that nature, but more to come on it. So back to the 300 million, what are we doing with it and why? This is an example of it. Here's how the 60 million breaks down. Cash, that they don't have to use 3 million annually, but there's a budget that we put in. 12 million for that crisis stabilization unit I talked to you about. 11 million for in-kind support, and 7 million to actually pay for Eagle Valley Behavioral Health. Chris Lindley and his team. If you haven't met Chris, you should. He's amazing. We just hired him in July, and he's already off and running. Hope Center interventions, when we have this group of behavioral therapists that can go out to someone's home when there's some crisis going on, where you can treat them in a much more comfortable environment, unless the home itself is part of the problem. This has resulted in 78% reduction in transports to the ER since we implemented it a little over a year ago. It's 102 patients. Again, a bill that's $26,000 for the ED is a problem. We got to fix that too. But suffice to say, that's someone who oftentimes stays and then gets transferred somewhere else. But by not having them come to our ER, not only did we help treat them in a more appropriate environment, but they didn't get burdened with a huge bill, which is an important issue because a lot of the people who have these problems don't have health care insurance. And again, school-based clinicians, we have 9 school-based clinicians in 10 schools. We're going towards 17 so that all schools are represented. We do the eChat parent. I don't know if anybody's ever attended one of these. They're amazing. They're great. They're a big one. Look at the people who've attended this. It's amazing. And now we've started to also do them in Spanish, which is great. We had our first one in Spanish. The room was again full. We put together a website that says, this is the Eagle Valley Behavioral Health, 100% wholly owned subsidiary of Vail Health. It's a place where you can go and say, okay, I need the following type of therapist, or I have the following conditions, and can you tell me what type of therapist I need? Who are the people? Are they accepting patients? What are the insurance that they take? It's a pretty sophisticated website. I encourage you to check it out. As we continue to add, get up to that 50 providers, this issue of access will begin to be hopefully addressed. We've started an anti-stigma campaign. Because part of the problem is that people think that somehow or another if you've got a behavioral health issue, it's a sign of weakness. It's almost consistent with just, strap your bootstraps out and just get back out there, rub some dirt on it, you're going to be okay. It's the mentality sometimes you find up in these mountains, but we've got to start talking about it. You should be as embarrassed to tell someone you haven't seen a therapist in years you would to say I haven't had my teeth cleaned. Just imagine if we spend as much time focusing on our mental health as we do our physical health. People here climb 14ers 10 times and brag about all these things that they do with their physical health. We need to be bragging about what do we do in the state as mentally healthy as we are physically healthy. So, long live. And you're going to hear us talk more and more about this. You're not defined by this disease, and it is a disease. It's just like having cardiovascular disease. It is a real clinical problem. Your story's not finished. You're not a burden. You will get through this and write the next chapter. I'm paraphrasing what you see here. Long live the depressed. It's intended to turn your head. Long live the traumatized. Long live the alcoholic, the abused, the bipolar, the addicted, etc. And on top of it, we're doing it all in Spanish. Because as you know, we have a very big Spanish population here. 52% of the kids in Eagle County schools are Hispanic. Latinx is probably a better way for me to say that. So, lastly, the East Wing, this was also a real popular thing that was done. What do they say? The state bird of Colorado is the crane. And healthcare was no exception to that, but I will tell you, if you haven't been to Vail Health, just past Valet, if you look off to your right where the EDs dropped off, that's from 1970 something. We can't even upgrade certain things in the central utility plant there. They said, man, we don't make that anymore. We quit making it in 1987. And more importantly, we need to, while we have this money, take advantage of it to reinvest it in our physical plant. It's a normal business thing to take your earnings and put them back into your physical plant. This will be here for decades to come. We're excited about it. You all should be excited about it. And again, if we start focusing on ways that we improve the quality of care, lower the cost of it, and address some of these crises, and deal with this PR problem that we have through our actions more than our words, I think people will start to recognize what it really is. For those of you who are curious, it's cath lab, the upgraded ICU and patient care unit, pre-op, post-op, ED, etc., etc. These are some of the renderings for it. In case you didn't pick up on it, my priorities: quality of care, lowering the cost of healthcare, transparency in everything we do, but in particular with price. It doesn't make any freaking sense. Behavioral health, and somehow or another figuring out how in the heck to raise a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, which I stink at. So I just do a ton, and I appreciate your attention, and I'm sorry if I went too fast or if I went too slow, but I'm hoping that you begin to understand how these broader macro issues that I've just talked to you about at the federal and the state level are even accentuated here in the mountains, but more importantly what Vail Health is trying to do to reverse it. Questions for me? I'll take questions. I like the pointed ones. I'm not afraid of them. Yes?
Of the new mental health providers, behavioral health providers, will they be taking commercial insurance? That's one of the biggest downfalls.
Absolutely. So what happens if you have Medicaid, you can get in.
Right.
If you have a lot of cash, you can get in. If you've got insurance that you paid a lot of money for, you can't.
Right.
And so yes, part of what we're doing is we're subsidizing folks to get here, is we're saying you can't do a wallet biopsy. You've got to let all comers come. Even vouchers for people who don't have insurance at all, that they then will submit back to us and we'll pay for it, because that was one of the barriers for them coming.
Right.
Yes?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
When is the Edwards campus opening?
So the question was, when's the Edwards campus open, the North Star campus? So we have to go through all the, right now we're trying to, number one, honor the leases that we have there. And number two, then figure out, okay, what does that leave left over for us to work with? You know, that back parking lot in the back of where the brewery used to be is where we're likely, most likely going to build something. There's some easement issues with what's under the ground there, and we've got to go through a PUD process. You know, with Eagle County and with the locals, there's a neighborhood that's just on the other side of those railroad tracks that we want to be very cognizant of. We're hoping that we'll have all these things done over the next 3 to 6 months and then start breaking ground in the summer. So we've got to cross our T's and dot our I's, but that's the tentative plan as of today.
How many square feet is it planned to be?
It depends on whether or not we're going to do inpatient. If we just do crisis stabilization, which is, again, you can spend the night, but it's not classified as inpatient, and that changes the way the codes are for building out buildings, then it's about 20,000 square feet. If we're going to have inpatient, it puts it up to about 40. So I would say somewhere between 20 and 50 is the likely possibility. That's just for that building. The Eagle County wants to put Department of Public Health there and some Health and Human Services there. We were talking about 8,000 square feet for Mountain Family Health to leave our Edwards campus that's near Shaw and come there. So we could, in totality, end up being even higher than the 50,000 and piece all this together. But the stabilization that I mentioned to you is somewhere between 20 and 50. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
What can you do to help those of us as self-employed because we have limited to no health insurance options?
Yeah, so a few things. So it depends on if you're providing it today or not. And if you are, it's a question of are you pushing to the individual exchange and giving a voucher, or pushing to the individual exchange and raising their base salary, or are you actually buying off small group? Like how are you buying?
As an individual, so many of us don't qualify for any kind of discount, so it doesn't matter about the exchange. There are, what I understand, so Kaiser is the only one that goes up here, they're on December 31st.
That's not true.
Aetna is, or not Aetna, Anthem is here, but I haven't had the time to look into it, but that's only one option.
Let me give you this great point. There was two. There was Anthem and its Mountain Enhanced Network product, and there was Kaiser. When Kaiser left, he met with the head of Anthem, Janet Pogar, not the head, but the one that's responsible for this market, to give them double-digit discounts so that they could in turn package something together to put on the individual exchange that was cheaper than Kaiser. In the process of doing that, we filed the rates and everything. They came out with this legislative thing called reinsurance, which is insurance for the insurance companies. Because one of the biggest drivers of their premium spend is the 2 or 3 or 4 cases that have like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of cancer, the transplant, what have you. And so the way it works is if you have one of those and you're an insurance company, you can file a claim to help pay some of that off as long as you take those savings and push it into a lower premium. So, and the hospitals are paying for a portion of that, 45 million of it. So the shorter side of it is Anthem and its Mountain Enhanced Network on the exchange today as we speak, going into effect in January, is cheaper than what Kaiser was before. There's bronze, silver, and gold. So $350 for the bronze plan with like a $4,000 deductible. You can pay $400. I'm making this up, but I'm close. For a silver option, it only has a $2,000 deductible. $500. It's all listed out there, and it's about 30% cheaper than it was last year. 30. So for Anthem. Now, the problem is the individual market represents about 10% of the total commercially insured population. So that's why we're working with Anthem now on a small group plan. It couldn't go into effect for January because, again, it just started and I didn't even know what I didn't know. I've since then gotten myself up to speed and submitted it to the Insurance Commissioner to go into effect for 4/1, April 1st of 2020. That should also see very significant, like 15% reductions in the premiums that are there. So, and to be honest with you, that's probably even not enough. But this is sort of round one of this. And then we're watching to say, okay, well, what's happening with this state insurance option, this public option that they're talking about in the paper, and what is that going to mean? And I'd be happy to come back to you guys and talk to you about that as it crystallizes. It's kind of, they spent this last year analyzing it, and they're teeing it up for the FY 2020 or calendar year 2020 legislative session, which happens between January and May. So whatever comes out of that, and I think something will, it'll go into effect in January of 2021. While in parallel, we're working on something with Anthem that's even better than what we gave them for April. So it's coming, but I would say if you are a small business, as most of you are, it's just yourself, I go to the individual exchange, you'll find it 30% cheaper than it was last year with Kaiser. And that unfortunately is not the be-all, end-all to your problems, because if you pay less in premium, you're going to pay more in a deductible. So, and we got to get there. I mean, it is complicated, but we're working on it. I want you to know. You bet. Yes, sir.
Will, first of all, welcome to the Valley.
Thank you.
You all welcome to the Valley. Gosh, one of your goals you had up there was transparency.
Sure.
And I would love to be able to see, like, if, as a consumer contacts you and says, what's this going to cost? It'd be great if that consumer could get a price on what it's going to cost. It seems like the medical profession is the only business that doesn't seem to be able to give you a cost. If you go to anybody in this room, I say, what's it going to cost to sell my house? I know it. I go to my plumber, my electrician, my painter, whatever, hard goods, soft goods, everything restaurant, I get a price. Medical profession, I can't seem to get a number, and I was like, oh, well, I'm paying cash or insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, good insurance, bad insurance, no insurance. It's like, I've never been able to get a number, and I always wonder, like, I want to go for convenience, but it's, why is it so difficult to get transparency? What's the price of this?
Right. I think the answer to why was that by not having it make any sense, we got away with it for a long time. If I'm going to call it like it is, we would hide behind, well, there's charges, but that's not really what your insurance company's paying, because those are secret negotiated rates that are percentage charges. And oh, by the way, that's not what you're paying, because what you're paying depends on what insurance product you have, and is there copay and deductible co-insurance, and oh, by the way, it kind of depends on other health care that you utilize. So man, it's just so hard to figure out. We're sorry, but hey, can you give us $20,000? So that's why you see things like Trump putting an executive order saying that rates must be published online. Put all that stuff aside. Here's what Vail Health's going to do, and I know I have to end here because I'm at my time. We're working on a price estimator, okay, that is one part a technical solution. It says it has real-time interfaces with whatever insurance company you have, be it Medicare or Anthem or what have you. It goes out and says, oh, okay, well, Will, you're about to receive care. We're going to talk to your insurance company, UMR, that's going to tell us, here's what your deductible is, here's what your copay is, here's how much you pay for your deductible. And then the provider itself is going to say, well, I'm having a colonoscopy, I'm getting close to 50 years old. We're going to say it's a screening colonoscopy and assume it's just that. But then if after the screening colonoscopy they find a polyp and clip it and then have to do pathology on it, we're going to come back and give a revised quote and say, well, what did that cost as well? And then they're going to have a group of people that are navigators that will be on the phone helping you sort of walk your way through it. So we're working on it. It's called the patient financial journey. We want to change our billing process so the bills come out in 2 weeks and not 2 months. This is all in addition to transparency. We want the bills to be easier to understand. They make no sense. I worked in healthcare and have for 22 years, and I can't even read some of our own bills. And there's a host of other things. How do you do it from your phone? And what other industry? Every other industry makes it so easy to take your money. We make it almost impossible to give it to us. But once we do get it, we take a chunk of it. So the bottom line on all this is it's coming. It's part of this broader patient financial journey that will include a price estimator, financial navigators that will be on the phone with you, simplifying the process and the billing statements. It's going to take me, unfortunately, because I'm having to blow everything up and start from the scratch, from the ground up. It's going to probably take me another 3 to 6 months, but it's coming. Because without the forces, market forces, where people can say, whoa, if I go, and MRI is the only one that people can really see. You go read the Vail Daily classified ad, if you got the guts to do it. They just bash and go, oh, it's 2,000 at Vail Health and it's 1,000 at Valley. That's why I just made it 800. That's been missing. Market forces have been missing from healthcare. That's why it's as expensive as it is. People need to know, okay, well, if I'm going to get a colonoscopy, it's going to cost me $2,000 at Vail Health, but only $1,500 in Denver. But by the time I factor the day of taking off work and having to drive down there, it may be worth it for me. That's missing. So we're working on getting that in place. And some of it's going to get handed down to us. Some of it we're going to be working on our own. But I think over the next 6 months you'll see that drastically improve. Okay? I'm over my time. I did start a little bit later in my time. But I want to be respectful because you guys have some great speakers here. I really appreciate the opportunity to stand before you today. If ever you'd like to talk, personally, one-on-one, or bring me somewhere, I'm happy to do it. Just let me know. Part of what I'm trying to do is help people understand what it is that Vail Health is doing and get feedback from them on what we need to do in addition to that, so that we can actually return to being what we should be, which is a meaningful part of this community that's addressing these crises that we're all grappling with.
And then we will take a short break, a 10-minute break. We have Beth Howard, who is the VP and Chief Operating Officer for Vail Mountain, and also Jan Benjamin, who is Director of Marketing for Vail and Beaver Creek. I will give you all the mic.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much. I always appreciate this opportunity to give you an update. Last year I was here giving an update on Beaver Creek, but I moved down the road to Vail, which is awesome. And anyone go to opening day in Vail Mountain last Friday? Thank you. Get a burrito by any chance? Dance to some of that music? That was some good energy that day. Ribbon cutting and snowmaking. So it's so good to be open. Being in operations, having a cadence of every day that lifts are run a certain time of that is much better than the lead up to trying to get the mountain open. But always exciting every single year. So really the big update for Vail Mountain, and it's probably not news to all of you because we've been talking about it for quite some time, is our snowmaking investment on the mountain. And I wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes thought about putting that investment into our mountain. So this past summer, we did a significant snowmaking upgrade and new snowmaking to the mountain. And we put in 19 miles of new snowmaking pipe, 421 new snowmaking guns, and got 200 more acres of coverage for snowmaking, and we targeted the higher elevation above Mid-Vail. So if you skied on Friday, you got to experience a totally reimagined opening day. So instead of going out of Born Free one run on the lower part of the mountain, which is tough to get in November because of the temperatures, we were able to go up top where we have cold temperatures, make snow, and have more variety of terrain. So we had Swingsville as a green run and Ramshorn as a blue. And we had some natural, and Slifer Express, Cappuccino, we got those activated as well. And then an upload down along download run. This allows us to go out early in May. We said, hey, opening day is November 15th. Instead of setting a later date and hoping for an earlier date, we are confident that we can hit that early season date as we did this year, regardless of the weather, because we have higher elevation snowmaking temperatures, and anything we put down early season, October, November, stays. So that was really the strategy behind going up top. Now, our goal, if we can get this next weather cycle coming in favorably with these cold temperatures, we can start to connect the skiways over to Lineset and activate the village over there as well. So our next phase in snowmaking is to get Chair 8 uploaded, Chair 2 connect Cubs Way over to Meadows, and then into the main pod at Mid-Vail. Once we get more snow, we'll go to Northwoods, and boom, we'll open the mountain. So we're just, we need a little bit of help from Mother Nature right now with jumps, and we'll get everything connected. The other piece we did, which was new, is that we put enhanced snowmaking over in Chair 12, Gopher Hill, which is our beginner area in Golden Peak. And it's the first time we've ever had a dedicated area for our beginners. So we didn't have to interface on a very congested run with advanced skiers coming through with people who are trying to learn skills. That's been a real win for us. And then we connected the skiway, put new snowmaking in from Chair 12 and Golden Peak to Donald 1, so they could connect over as they progress in their skills. So it's all worked really nicely early season, and with all of that investment on the mountain and our more reliable early season activation for our guests, we worked with the town and our merchants to say, how can we take the energy on the mountain and bring it into the villages? So when our guests come early season, they have a holistic experience that they come off the mountain and there's things to do in the villages. So we worked with a new program called Reveille, and that is really activating the Thanksgiving week. So the 23rd to the 30th, there are full activations in town with legacy parades and Kris Kringle markets and holiday tree lighting, all this stuff, because we want our guests to continue and engage in our community. We also we want our guests to have confidence in booking here early season. You know, with a few droughts in there, it kind of gets people a little skeptical, and we're trying to say, hey, we can do this with our snowmaking, and you know what, the community's rallying around what we're doing up on the mountain. So Reveille Vail is what we're talking about, early season activation, if you can remember that. The second piece is guest service training. You'll hear the words Prima Vail. And what we did with Vail Mountain, the town, the merchants, we all got together and said, how can we have a more seamless experience for our guests on guest service? How do we elevate and differentiate the experience even more. And we said, let's take the curriculum that Vail Resorts has, which is epic service. Can we work with the town, brand it in a different way, and take the same principles so everything we talked about in guest service training is consistent. So if you're engaging with a parking attendant or a host or a lift operator, all feels really good. And that's our goal in the Vail guest service training. And there's more than just guest service training. There's leadership forums, there's recognition programs, history tours, all those things. So that's the second initiative that we worked on with the community. And the third one is Vail Opera. Anybody hear those bells ringing on Pepe's deck? This is all about fun. And it's about activating the operating day part for our guests. So at 3 o'clock every day, we've all gotten together and said, everyone at 3 o'clock for 12 bell rings, not a jingle jingle go away, 12 bell rings, we had training on this, that everyone would activate and our guests would say, what's going on? There must be something going on. And then our merchants and our businesses have committed to doing an activation around Opry. It could be as simple as a beer special. It could be live music. I think the Blue Moose and Lion's Head is doing a complimentary champagne toast every day at 3 o'clock. Everyone's doing activations. And the goal is to have our guests come off the mountain, continue their experience and engage with our villages. And in the end, having a great time and saying, you know what, Vail is awesome. And we want them back. We want to build the guest loyalty, and we all win. So those are our three: Prima Vail, Reveille, and Vail Opry. And thank you. He was giving me a little sidekick there if I wasn't even remember that.
One team.
Yeah, one team. So it's been so much fun, and we're excited as we roll out and hopefully get this new storm cycle in here. We'll have more training for everyone. But it's been a great start to the season, and thanks for all of you who are ambassadors and out selling real estate and doing all the good things you do. You're in the know. You need to be in the know because you're selling a very personal lifestyle product, and this keeps our community thriving. So that's all I had to say. I want Jan to come up here to talk. Do you want Q&A at the end, or you want to do Q&A after each mountain?
I was just saying,
Okay.
stadium the Golden Gate race course.
Oh, yeah.
Expansion on
How
that.
could I forget that?
Yeah.
That was significant.
Snowmaking on it.
We do. So that was the other piece of our busy summer. We have about a 68-acre expansion in Golden Peak in the race arena for Ski and Snowboard Club Vail. We put snowmaking all up and down, a new T-bar lift from mid-6, the top of tier 6, up. And we have a downhill course now, and we have the GS, Super G. It's a full training venue now. I think this morning they just started training on the lower part because Doppelmayr is just wrapping up the final pieces of commissioning the T-bar. And we'll get snowmaking on that, and then we'll go. And their clubhouse I went in it the other day. It's fantastic. And so they're great partners. Ski and Snowboard Club Vail, they're truly partners with us. We fulfill all the operational aspects. We fulfilled all the capital, and they funded everything. So wonderful partnership, state-of-the-art, best-in-class race venue, and couldn't be more proud to work with them. So yeah, it's pretty special. Thank you. Yes.
Will the public have access to the T-bar?
They will. We're working right now with Ski and Snowboard Club Vail on their training. When they're not training, we'll open up to the public, and we're going to post it on our website so everyone can go on and say, okay, can we go over there today? It'll be worth, it's like a bucket list thing to go over and do that T-bar. It's pretty sporty because when you get out, if anyone ridden a T-bar, that's sporty of its own, but you hit that first, you load, and it goes like this, and then it mellows, and then boom. So yeah, pay attention when you're on that T-bar. I drove it in a truck this summer, and it's got some grade. So perfect for racing. So yeah, lots of good things happening. Thanks for reminding me on that one. So I'm gonna let Benjamin, Jan Benjamin, come up here and talk about Beaver Creek. All right? Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, everyone. It's my first opportunity to see and meet many of you. Unlike Beth, I'll give a quick little intro. So I've been in the Valley for 8 years. Came out here from the East Coast where I was born and raised as a marketing manager with Beaver Creek. And since then, been climbing the ranks, senior manager at Vail. Then I had the opportunity for applying for Phil Metz's job. I don't know if you know him, but he was the senior director of Vail and Beaver Creek, and now he's my current boss still as a VP. So I've been in this role as marketing director for Vail and Beaver Creek for a year and 3 days since today's the 19th, so it's still pretty fresh. But it's been an awesome, experience in the Valley, supporting both of the brands in a variety of capacities. And I've known Beth for a couple of years, from Red Sky interfacing to now on the winter operations side, and she's a fantastic leader. And it's a good team. So no joke, it is one team. So today, I briefly wanted to give you a little bit of background on Beaver Creek's brand, history, aspirations, and then talk about the exciting new things happening with the brand, because both Vail and Beaver Creek is making this valley super energized with what's happening in the most recent couple of years and what we have on the horizon for the next 2 years. So if you hadn't heard or have been exposed to, Beaver Creek's aspiration is to be the world's best luxury family resort. It's not necessarily a consumer-facing drive and initiative or vision, but one that we as the company and leaders of the brand are trying to push the limits on and keep ourselves modern and connected to what that family experience is as the guest, persona and dynamic is also evolving. We've got a whole nother generation of guests that are coming to the Valley, those who are looking to, plan roots, second homeowners. I mean, I think you can all relate. There's a shift happening with our population, and so what Beaver Creek once was isn't what's going to get us to continue being a leader in that space moving into the future. So how we continue to push that envelope, and we've kind of built that vision about 2.5 years ago, is along our brand spires. So many brands have a brand foundation, pillars. We call them spires. We want to be a little different and unique. But we try and orient just about every decision we make, whether it's capital, whether it's a guest experience, whether it's a product development on ski school, around 3 different spires. The first is legendary attention to detail. I think those who visit Beaver Creek, I think all of you have been there. We sweat the small stuff. The details truly matter. It's the presence, it's the guest interaction, it's the gift of time. So that's one big component. The second is rarefied experiences. We do have amazing fine dining. We've got amazing on-mountain experiences, which we call Beaver Creek Reserve. So whether it's a snowshoe experience concluding with charcuterie and wine at the Osprey, or it's White Glove First Tracks, we do provide these unique experiences that we hope to differentiate ourselves from the competitive set, locally, globally, and even within our portfolio at Vail Resorts. And then the third is being a perpetual host. The guest service at Beaver Creek is unparalleled to a lot of resorts out there. I think Deer Valley kind of comes close. Aspen Snowmass is a consideration set for us as well. I think some people are doing it very well. North Star in our portfolio does it really well as well, but we try and continue to push that boundary, and it is all about the gift of time, because a lot of our clientele and guests hustle bustle wherever they're coming from. They want to connect with their family, and they might not have had the opportunity in the day-to-day, and this is the place to do that. So with those 3 spires in mind, we've been orienting a lot of our decision-making against that. And with the exciting news this past summer, there's been quite a bit of collaboration with the resort company on reinvigorating the base area and the village. If you haven't been up there this summer, or most recently, Blue Moose got a full renovation on their facade and internal structure. Base Mountain Sports was a part of that as well. The ice rink rental experience is also totally renovated. So that's all base area components. On the mountain side, we invested quite a bit of capital in reimagining the kids' ski school check-in experience. So that entire facility, we took down walls, we changed the entire flow of how a parent and child check in. And rather than kind of mixing them between upstairs and downstairs based on age and go over here to pick up your skis, but you got to get your boots over here, it's all now a guest journey experience. And to boot, it's all very fresh, very modern, light, white colors, beautiful lighting, kind of like chiseled brick. So if you get an opportunity to go in there, please check it out. It kind of brings us to the next level of modernization and reinvigorating that experience. And then the last big piece was snowmaking expansion, more of infrastructure on Red Buffalo Park. So Beth talked about higher elevation gives you colder temperatures, more dependability, a better product, and Beaver Creek did exactly that as well. We put in about 10,000 feet of pipe, air and water, a ton more hydrants, and so that effectively allows us to get the connection from the top of Share 8 over to Red Buffalo Park, so that our guests kind of green, low blue skill level to get up there and connectivity into the Red Buffalo experience. And then we've got that lift running as a pod. It also allows us top to bottom skiing. So if you read the paper this morning, we're going to be opening early. That'll be very much a lower mountain experience on Gold Dust and in Haymeadow Park. But our goal by Thanksgiving is to have top to bottom skiing. And that effectively gives us the most vertical in Colorado in the early season, because not many resorts can rival that top to bottom experience. So that was a cognizant effort this past summer to unlock that opportunity for our guests. On the horizon, McCoy Park. So we are super excited to provide McCoy Park next winter. So this summer we did some tree thinning and lift line cutting, surveying, things of that nature, because next year, which is really a couple months of a construction season, we close in April, elk calving happens, and so once elk calving closure is opened up, we basically have 2.5, 3 months to install 2 lifts, cut all the trails, and provide this new experience within the McCoy Park area for our guests in the upcoming winter. So that'll be a big initiative that we're talking about all winter long. It complements the 3 parks that we have on the mountain. We've got Red Buffalo Park, Haymeadow Park, and McCoy is this last third piece to it. And it's all about progression and learning. So if you think about it, Haymeadow Park, little buckaroo, now it's called Haymeadow Express. Kids learn how to ski there, or adults. Then they progress to Red Buffalo, offering that beautiful, majestic view of the Gore. And then next year, the unveiling of McCoy Park gives you intermediate terrain and graded experiences that are groomed, and it should be an awesome, tranquil, serene environment that is safe, comforting, and if you think about it, it kind of skis like a bowl, so go to the outer perimeters, you'll always funnel to the bottom with your family and loved ones, so it's definitely going to differentiate our product big time into the upcoming season. So that's the mountain side of things. Any questions so far? Because that'll transition to village. Oh, you're catching me off guard.
70.
Don't worry.
70.
And it's above the touring center.
Yes, it is. So access will be either through Larchburg and kind of come over that knoll, and you're kind of in the upper section of the experience. You could also, that will be the primary entryway, but we're going to have an egress lift that gets you out from the bottom of it, out towards kind of the Nordic Center area, so it's an egress three-person lift. But the Nordic Center is at the base of Chair 12, if that's what you're kind of referencing. So it definitely will be an elevated experience. So where all the Nordic trails are, they're going to be on the perimeter now, and down the center is basically ski trail.
The Nordic Center will remain.
I'm sorry?
The Nordic Center will remain.
It will remain, correct, yeah. So there's 17 trails complementing the acreage. Thank you for that help there. And all very much graded experience with aspens. That's the mountain side of things, which has been a busy summer as well. I think the last bit I wanted to highlight is when we talk about perpetual hosts, legendary attention to detail, and Beth talked about our collaboration on the Vail side with the town on bringing these things to life. That same relationship exists with the Beaver Creek Resort Company. And, the on-mountain experience is one thing, but there's a whole nother experience to happen off the mountain. And so I talked about the village reinvigoration, but our guest service is something that has resonated, and we've got data that suggests is a key component on driving loyalty. And that's an important piece to all of our businesses. And so it's very much like Prima Vail, that's brand new for the Vail community. We have one village at Beaver Creek, and Nadia Guerrero, our newest COO, who couldn't be here today, so I'm her proxy, is speaking at that engagement, and it's a hosting of about 300 to 400 on-mountain employees, as well as the merchant community and frontline facing employees, new, returning, to learn about our brand. The more people that know the common through line of what we're trying to achieve and how to deliver our guest service, that provides a consistent delivery, whether it's on mountain, off mountain, returner, new. And so one thing I wanted to highlight, because that's in its 3rd year on the Beaver Creek side. Prima Vail is brand new this year. We're getting it off the ground, and so far we've had great attendance. But the more we're doing with the townships and our community stakeholders allows us to provide that one-of-a-kind guest experience here in the valley, and that drives the loyalty, and the loyalty drives return, retention, and reinforces what we're trying to do all around in the valley. So my last bit to highlight, but it's a lot of components. It's exciting, it's busy, but it's been an awesome journey so far, at least in this role for the last year. But you know, seeing how these two resorts have thrived for the last 8 and where we're headed is an exciting time for, I think, all of us to recognize. And like Beth said, not to, you know, be a broken record, like you're our ambassadors as well. And the more awareness and education we can give you and extended partners allows us all to provide that information to prospective, you know, clients, returning guests, their generations of those who are coming. So that's my little bit for today, my first effort. But I welcome questions along the way. Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about the guest services, that makes perfect sense to me. But what are you guys doing to, aside from the Blue Moose remodel and base mountain, I mean, what are you doing with retail? What's going, because the village just, that's what I get from my clients, is that the village is just sad.
Sad. Fair point. So the way that we're approaching the village, so there's a couple layers to it. The Beaver Creek Resort Company is the primary manager of the space. Nadia Guerrero, our COO, sits on the board, and so she and Jen Brown, who's the director of the Beaver Creek Resort Company, have been trying to work with the Vail Resorts leasing team that has a couple components of the village, as well as the existing community partners and merchants in the area to lay out a master plan. One of the big focus areas is culinary. We're looking to find a great high-end culinary, you know, or restaurateur that can come in and bring that level of caliber that we see in Vail and some of our other communities. So that's a big priority that the group is working on. We continue to offer, I'm behind the scenes, like I don't have the exposure, but you know, prospective merchants and retailers to come and bring a different mix beyond the culinary experience. So we've got the new Los Libros that's in the, you know, formerly art gallery above Hooked, basically. They're coming in new this year.
Is that a bookstore?
It's a book cafe kind of barista experience. So I think, you know, Rimini offers kind of the hot cocoa chocolate. You know, we've got Starbucks, but Los Libros would be in that space with, you know, a little bit more of a cultural feel to it, kind of like a book room of sorts. So I think I don't have a great answer on like what we're doing, but the vision is to bring in restaurateurs and a culinary scene. The other element that I didn't want to highlight too much because I don't have all the details, but with the reinvigoration, we've partnered with a producer down in Denver to bring some art installations into the village. We've been on a track and a timeline to try and unveil those this opening day. Due to the production timeline, we're not doing that, but it is on the horizon to hopefully have done this winter. So when we think about like art installations and a little bit more of a cultural feel, that isn't just our, you know, brick and mortar experience in the village, but a little more of an interactive art installation. That's something on the horizon with the resort company that they're trying to bring in. So I think I appreciate your sentiment, and it's one that many of us share. The roadmap is there. It's, you know, I think the hard part is connecting the dots with those who want to participate. Are we providing enough of an incentive? Like, that's a little bit outside of my world when it comes to real estate and commercial leasing, but it's something top of mind for all the leaders for sure. But if you, please continue to share the feedback with the Nadias and the resort company as you have it, because it is, you know, if it's constructive, we'll appreciate it, and it's what we're trying to do.
I just noticed hesitation in my clients of wanting to buy a Beaver Creek for fear of
What's next? You know, I'm 35 years old.
You got time. There you go.
I've got time, and I've seen, you know, candidly, you know, starting as a manager with my former leaders, it's been on the horizon of what is Beaver Creek's next like foray or the generation, or what's our pivot point. So Nadia, I don't have her formal bio, but you know, she came from North Star, and she was very much in the event space. She's very much progressed that experience there, and she is coming here with fresh eyes, fresh blood. And in our last couple months, because she joined the team, you know, midsummer, we've been talking on a weekly basis about what is the next step for Beaver Creek to be the world's luxury family resort. You know, Disneyland's Disneyland, but they continue to reinvest in the attractions and what's progressing and keeping themselves fresh. And very much that's what Nadia and I are trying to drive. And we have those conversations with senior leadership, and you know, they've got an appetite for it. So it's there. You know, we've got the homegrown like grassroots attitude. We just now need to help connect the dots. So, yeah.
Did you say the snowmaking system at Vail's done? Or do you think we can expect to see more rain and snow future winters?
At Vail or Beaver Creek? Vail. So the capital initiative that Beth talked about, that scope is complete from the snowmaking infrastructure this summer that we had scoped. It's pretty darn robust. I don't have any expectation that we'll get additional, capital support in the near future. But this project's been in the works for about 10 years, and who's not to say that we'll start reimagining what it could be in another 10, 20 years. So never say never, especially in this business. If there's one thing I learned with Vail Resorts. When we think about temperatures, we only saw the infancy of this system up in Midvale, and the temperatures haven't been conducive for the lower part of the mountain, which has also a ton of guns that have been installed. So I think in a good year, you'll see an amazing opening day experience, which is base areas, Midvale, down lower, adding natural snow like we had last year. I mean, if you look at photos, it'd be pretty damn impressive. Anything else? Yes.
A comment and a question.
Yeah.
I commend you for what you're doing at Vail. I did go skiing on opening day, and all the new snowmaking is, I won't go up skiing with one run, but if you have multiple runs, I'll go up skiing. I skied for about 2.5 hours, and it was fun. Some people rave, some people complain, but I thought after this coming up on my 40th year here, it was fun, and it was enjoyable. So I think it's good for the experience, what Beth talked about. The experience for future early on is going to be phenomenal for our guests coming in here, our clients, people from all over. They can come in here and have a lot of runs open early on. It'll be phenomenal, and I think it's spectacular. I hiked up there, but a month before you opened, to see all the stuff that was going on. It's amazing amount of equipment that you're putting all over. It's big bucks. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So here's my question. Beaver Creek is opening this Saturday, one run. I won't go skiing on open day with one run. And you talked about the guest experience. Here's my pet peeve, and I throw this out to your marketing guy, you can answer this. Beaver Creek is always focused early on for the World Cup race, like the 5th, 6th, 7th, plus or minus day. I like races, it's fun, but my question is, since it's all focused on the guest experience, if you took all those resources and put them into getting like 2, 3, 4 runs open versus the race course, so that when our guests get here, the average skier, and plus all the people that have epic passes, have a much better experience. Yeah. It goes back to most people in the United States are spectators versus participants. Here in Vail and Beaver Creek, all of us are more like we're participants, we're doers. So what would it take? Tell me what your return on investment, why they focus so much early on, because it's big bucks, a lot of resources, a lot of man hours, and it's world, but wouldn't it be better to focus on the guests that's paying to give them a better experience, just like Beth said for Vail?
Yeah, this has come up before. Just to be transparent. So I don't have details on the ROI and kind of the components of that. With the partnership with the Vail Valley Foundation, resort company in the mountain, we've got 3 partners bringing that to life. It fits within our rarefied experience Spire bucket, if you will, which justifies a little bit of Beaver Creek is the only resort in America that hosts this sort of event.
Understood.
So it fits that box, but in terms of offering a better package for the guests on that, I think that's like the root of your question or comment. The Red Buffalo component will help in time. Now we're offering top to bottom, which formerly we didn't, typically around this season of early December when the event happens, unless we have favorable temps. So that's one element that'll add on. We have looked to do connectivity from the top of Chair 6 into the venue and offer runs, which is very much also Mother Nature dependent. So we've had variability depending on what we can deliver on mountain during that event weekend. The discussion on how do you deviate or reallocate the resources of the infrastructure to on mountain, it's not necessarily, from what my experience is, we're over-indexing the snowmaking infrastructure here, so we can't use it here. We do have the capability to, use the pumping and the water and create more of an experience on the center of the mountain. It just comes down to the human aspect of the resource. So, not to say, I just want to address that piece. It's not so much like they're taking all of the water and air from the snowmaking, and we can't put it elsewhere in the mountain, but it's more of a labor resource. And the question I don't have a good answer, and it's not that I'm running around. I just want to give context. It's one that I don't know. At this point, I think I have to consult Nadia, and like them off and see what the ideal opportunity is there. But it has come up, and I think it's a fair one. But it is a destination driver. That's one thing. And while the locals would appreciate a lot more skiing, I would as well. We do get good feedback from our guest experience surveys that suggests it's not a deterrent or deviating from what Beaver Creek wants to be. So I think when you look at the indicators, good versus bad, it's net positive at this point. But it's a point that's been talked about for years that I've been around. So I don't have a good answer to say how do we shift it, but that's context.
Our next speaker that we have for you today is Holly Loff, and she is the Executive Director for the Eagle River Watershed Council, and she's here to speak about the state of the rivers and the water in our valley. And with that, I will give you the floor.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you all for being here today and allowing me to have some time on the schedule. I think this is the third or fourth time that I've presented at this meeting, so those of you that have heard me speak before, it's good to see you again, and those of you that are new, feel free to jump in at any point if you have a question. Don't feel like you have to wait until the end. And yeah, let's get started. So as Mel said, I'm Holly Loff. I'm the Executive Director from Eagle River Watershed Council. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we focus on keeping the rivers and streams of Eagle County healthy, and so that includes the Upper Colorado and the Eagle River and all of their tributaries that fall within the county. And it's very unusual to have a single river fit within a single county, but we do have that here within Eagle County. The Eagle River fits completely within the boundaries. So we keep an eye on the entire thing. And we do that through our water quality monitoring, our education and outreach efforts, and then also our restoration projects that we conduct throughout the valley. And I'll be talking more about those and also the conditions of the river. So the water quality monitoring and assessment program is really the program that we base everything else we do off of. The water quality monitoring and assessment program was founded about a decade ago, and prior to the program being started, in any watershed throughout the U.S., there are a number of people collecting water quality data. So in our valley, that is Eagle River Water and Sanitation District, the municipalities, also USGS or U.S. Geological Survey. They collect water quality data throughout the U.S. They're the ones that have those like metal little shacks next to the river, sometimes with a weather vane on top. And all of these different entities that are collecting water quality data are collecting different parameters. So maybe they're looking at the metals in the river or the temperatures and other water quality constituents. Prior to this program being founded, all of those entities that were collecting water quality data weren't necessarily communicating that data with each other or sharing it. And if you, for some reason, wanted to understand what was happening with water quality in a stream segment that's important to you, you would have to go to maybe 5 different entities to get all of the data that you wanted and to make sense of it. And because they don't have a policy in place or a program in place for sharing that information, it would be very difficult for you to get it. So we serve as a clearinghouse, receive all the data from 12 different water quality collectors, data collectors in the valley, and then pool all the information together. And that way we're able to pick up on emerging threats and see trends within the data and get out and address those with restoration projects or education and outreach efforts. Currently, this year, it takes about a year to receive macroinvertebrate data. So we're now just looking at the macroinvertebrate data from last year at this time, or last fall. Macroinvertebrates are the bugs that are in the stream. And the macroinvertebrates are really what you've probably seen a lot in the paper about for Gore Creek. People have been talking about the Restore the Gore campaign and how the aquatic life in Gore Creek isn't healthy. That's based on the macroinvertebrates or the bugs. So someone goes out every single year, They're a consultant to the Watershed Council, and they go out and they collect these bugs throughout the watershed. And then in the wintertime, they go through with a microscope and look at every single bug and sort them by type. And then they get a count based upon the types of bugs that they see. So in Gore Creek, where we've heard so much about the macroinvertebrate problems, it's not that there's no bugs. If you were to go mess around in Gore Creek for the day, you'll find plenty of bugs. It's just the biodiversity is not there, so there's not a lot of different types. You'll see a lot of worms, which are very tolerant. The bugs that are more sensitive to pollution are lacking. And we attribute that to development after years of study by the Watershed Council, the town of Vail, CDOT, the county, and many more. We've come to the conclusion that development is really the driving force behind this. And it's because we're turning a lot of our natural areas and our soils that are able to filter the pollution out. We're turning a lot of those into parking lots and roofs and roads and bike paths. And so all of that water then runs off of those surfaces and is moving quite quickly by the time it hits the creek and carries all of the pollution with it right into the stream. That's what's killing the bugs, or those sensitive bugs. So luckily, the water quality data, the macroinvertebrate data that we're looking at now from last year is actually showing improvements on Gore Creek. They're getting very close to attainment of the standards. So that means that the programs that they've put in place, the town of Vail has put in place, have really been effective. That's been education and outreach within the community. You've probably seen, as you've walked through Vail, the really beautiful stencils next to storm drains. They're artistic and they have facts on them that explain what's happening and why you're reading this piece of art next to a storm drain and why the storm drains are important to make sure you're only putting water down it. And so those efforts are really having an impact. We're looking to roll that out downstream. We're working with the town of Avon, where they're actually, unfortunately, seeing their scores for macroinvertebrates decline. And we want to get ahead of it before that decline continues any further. So we're trying to raise money over the next year to hire an additional staff person so that we can do the same programs that the town of Vail has been doing, but through the Watershed Council. We can assist the town of Avon and Edwards Metro District, Gypsum, Eagle, Minturn, Redcliffe, all the towns within the community, and really assist them in educating their community and doing these restoration projects. The Eagle Mine is really the Superfund site that was at the founding of the Watershed Council, or brought about the founding of the Watershed Council, so that we could serve as an organization that's making sure that the cleanup of the Eagle Mine is happening. The Eagle Mine is a Superfund site that was listed in the 80s when the mine, which was a zinc mine, was shut down. It went bankrupt. They shut it down. All the pumps were turned off. Groundwater continued to filter through the mountain, as it does, and filled the mine with water. And then when it reached a point of overflowing, it flowed right into the river, which you can see is right next to the mine. And when that happened, the river turned orange and fish could no longer really be found in the Eagle. The Watershed Council, EPA, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, many of the municipalities in the valley, the county, and Eagle River Water and Sanitation District work together to come up with a way of cleaning this up using the Superfund program. And we continue to do that. We're expecting a consent decree, which is really the document that outlines the new activities that will happen for furthering the cleanup. That consent decree is due to come out within a couple of weeks. We've already had the opportunity to review the draft of that with our technical advisors and have made recommendations to the EPA and Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment on additions or changes that they could make to the consent decree to make those activities stronger and to push the cleanup forward. And then this will be released for public comment here, as I said, in just a couple of weeks. And we'll be putting together a document to help the community review that and to make sense of it, and to also outline some talking points so that if you want to submit comments to the EPA or CDPHE on changes that you feel need to be made to that consent decree, you can do so. And Blackboard Creek Vail Pass, as you all know, when you're driving around in the winter time, CDOT puts down traction sands so that the road is not so slippery. That traction sand builds up over time though and runs off into Blackboard Creek, which runs right alongside I-70 up the pass. And we have worked with CDOT and our partners over the years to come up with a plan for keeping all of that sand out of the creek, which has major impacts on our fishery and, again, the aquatic life, the macroinvertebrates. Those systems include all of the sides of the road. The medians were paved further than they had been in the past. This was a number of years ago. And then CDOT bought a vacuum truck so they can vacuum all of this up every year before it runs off. Any of the sediment and traction sand that does run off during a rainstorm and what have you, it ends up in ponds and what looks like very large puddles up and down the pass, and those were put there intentionally to capture that sediment, and then they can go in with excavating equipment and scoop out all of that sediment on an annual to every other year basis. That keeps it out of Blackboard Creek. And I'm sure you've all heard at this point that CDOT has plans to expand Vail Pass to put in additional lanes. This has positive and negative effects for the community. I mean, it could be very positive for the economy. It also, we see it as an opportunity to put in the proper infrastructure to capture the sediment before it can get to the creek. But also, anytime you're adding additional asphalt and concrete, we're just increasing the opportunity for more problems to the creek. So the Watershed Council is engaged in these conversations with CDOT, and we are a stakeholder in the planning process. I think it was last year, there was a ballot measure that asked us all if we would increase taxes for projects like this, and that was voted down. Regardless of that, CDOT is moving forward with their plans so that when the funding comes into being, they can just hit the ground running and implement the project. So they are moving forward with the design plans, and that's what the conversations we're engaged in. It was brought to our attention that CDOT was looking at mitigating all of the impacts that would come from this expansion, all of those impacts to wetlands and what have you. They were looking at mitigating that outside of our valley. The Watershed Council, the county, and Eagle River Water and Sanitation District have been very outspoken in letting them know that that's not acceptable and that any of those mitigation measures need to happen within our own valley. So if the impacts are going to happen here, then the improvements need to also happen here. So stay tuned for things like that. Our education and outreach program saw some changes this year. We had Lizzie Scoter as our education and outreach coordinator for 3 years, and she was fantastic. Unfortunately, she decided to take on a water program in India, and so she left the Watershed Council, and that was a loss to the Watershed Council, but we also got a great opportunity of working with James Dilzell, who's our new education and outreach coordinator, who had been with Walking Mountains previously, and James has done great things in his new role already. James started at the end of June, and we launched the Youth Water Festival, which we called the Eagle River Water Festival. We held that at the end of September, so just 3 months after he started, and it was a fantastic program. It brought all of the school kids, all the fifth grade kids from throughout the valley to Colorado Mountain College for the day, and they worked their way through a bunch of different stations, learning about all different aspects of water. Water and Sanitation District was there running a booth on filtration. Walking Mountains was there talking about buoyancy of water. Lakota Guides ran a really fun station on river safety. They set up a relay where the kids had to put on a wetsuit and then a life jacket and a helmet and run down and climb into the raft and throw a throwback to each other. And I mean, this was a very exciting, high energy day. The kids were exhausted at the end, but they all had a really great time. Told us that they were really excited to do more programs with us, and their teachers also really enjoyed it and would like to come back next year. So we're calling it a success. And that was part of the Eagle Valley Outdoor Movement Program, or EVOM, which you've probably seen those logos popping up everywhere. It's a big effort by a lot of different entities within the valley. So it was exciting to launch that program. Our Watershed Wednesdays, that's our educational program. Sometimes those are daytime tours, like to the Eagle Mine, or their evening programs. This summer we did a bike tour that started at the 10th Mountain Division, or 10th Mountain Distillery in Gypsum, and we rode our bikes to the Stoneyard Distillery in Botsero and learned about water rights and water within their distilling process, and had a really great time testing out all of their products. And so we do a lot of different kinds of programs like that to get people engaged. Our last Watershed Wednesday of the season, or of the year, will be tomorrow actually at Loaded Joe's. And that one's going to be on cloud seeding. So Colorado River District will be there. They'll be talking about really the water rights behind cloud seeding and how it helps us in drought conditions, the concerns with it, and implications for river health. So if you have any interest in that program, join us at Loaded Joe's tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And it is a free program. Bug kicking. I should probably change the way that I say that on the slide, because without explanation it sounds terrible. But so bug kicking is really what the scientists refer to it as well, and that's this kick net right here. There's a net on the bottom, and we bring the kids out into the stream, and this is how the scientists do it too. You stick the net in the stream, you kick up the rocks upstream from it, and then all of the loose material and bugs and leaves wash down and get caught in the net, and then the kids can haul the net up on shore, dig through it, and find all of the bugs inside. We use ice cube trays because they make for a really simple way for kids to divide out the different types of bugs. So they can put all the worms in one section, all the caddisflies in another, all the stoneflies in another, and then we can have a conversation about the biodiversity and what we think that means for that particular stream. So it's a lot of fun. We've actually done it as a Watershed Wednesday for adults before, and adults have just as much fun as the kids do. So it's a really great way to have conversations about biodiversity and river health. The Wild and Scenic Film Festival, we hold that every April at the Riverwalk Theater. It sells out every single year, and we have anywhere from 10 to 14 films during the evening talking about adventure and conservation issues, mostly around water, but sometimes we break from that and do one on mountain biking or something else that really pertains to our valley and is of interest. But it's a really fun night, a lot of really great conversations during the intermission and after the films. There's beer and wine available during the event, and we also have a silent auction. So look for information on that. If you haven't attended before, it is a really good time. Then we have a column in the Vail Daily on a monthly basis, and also have a newsletter that is free. If you're not already receiving that, I would encourage you to go to our website and sign up. It has great links to different articles that keep you in the know on water issues, not just here locally, but nationally and worldwide. Our restoration projects take us all over the valley. We try to do a project in Vail every single year with the town of Vail, trying to address those problems that I talked about earlier with aquatic life. So last year that was at Cedar Point Townhomes, where the homeowners, we worked for a couple of years because it was the first time we'd ever done something like this. So we worked for a couple of years with the homeowners, also ecologists, landscape architects, and hydrologists, trying to come up with a plan where we could replant the riparian area, the area next to the stream, so that any fertilizers and other things that are put down on the turf grass when it rains doesn't run right into the stream. We wanted to do it in such a way that they weren't losing their views or the things that were really important to them, but that we were also addressing those concerns that we had. So we designed a great program or a great landscape design with Cedar Point Townhomes that they're very happy with. And then we've rolled the same thing out with Sundial Townhomes, which was a larger undertaking. Sundial's a much bigger homeowners association. I think there were 20 to 30 people, but I could be wrong on that. It's this picture in the lower left. So that was one of the largest tracts of turf grass within Vail along the river, and we significantly reduced the amount of turf grass while keeping enough for them to satisfy their uses of it. And then we reconnected that area in the center of the picture is a wetland that had been disconnected from Gore Creek. We were able to reconnect that by bringing down the berm that was between the wetland and the creek so that they could move, the water could move between the two more freely, like it should in a natural system. That's going to bring back more bird species for them. We also replanted all around the wetland area and everywhere that we removed the turf grass with native plants, and we really went through very carefully with the homeowners on those plant species to find those that weren't going to grow too tall so that it impacted their view, but also was going to achieve those things that we wanted and give them a really beautiful landscape. So they were very satisfied with it. Many of them came out and volunteered for the day to help us replant the area, and we're really excited to see how it starts growing in the spring, but in the fall it sure was looking beautiful. Then Piney River, this was our Forest Service project for the year. We work with the Forest Service every single year, typically with National Forest Foundation funds, and typically we're trying to address concerns in native cutthroat trout habitat. Our cutthroats have had their territory reduced to 1% of what it originally was. So we want to be sure that we're protecting that small amount of habitat that they have left and maybe expanding it a little bit over time. So a lot of the times the problems that we're seeing are people are camping in dispersed campsites too close to the stream, making their own bathrooms next to the stream, cutting down plants and causing more of that pollution that I was talking about with the runoff. So we replant those areas and make it so it's not somewhere that someone wants to drive or camp. And then clearly outline for them, delineate for them where they should be camping. Then noxious weeds, unfortunately we're starting to see tamarisk come into the valley, especially down in the Gypsum and Dotsero area. We know that tamarisk will just start moving its way upstream. Tamarisk is a tree that is very much a noxious weed and very hard to eradicate, so we want to get ahead of that. We did an inventory with the BLM and floated the river, identified where all the species were, and have plans for removal of those this next summer. And the tire removal. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the big, huge pile of tires in Edwards in the middle of the river with cones on top. If you haven't seen that, the next time you drive by, even on the interstate, if you look down by the Brett Ranch Villas, you'll see this pile of tires. There are some local homeowners there that their daughter noticed, I think she was 7 at the time, she noticed this huge amount of tires underwater and decided that she wanted to get those out. And so the families worked together with their neighbors to pull those out. Last year we helped them, they pile all of the tires up on a sandbar, and then the Watershed Council came in before runoff last year with our volunteers and rafts and moved those off of the sandbar and got them loaded onto a Bridgestone truck to be recycled. And there were 300 on that truck.
Where did they come from?
They think there's a lot of different theories. There was an auto body shop in the area. That's also, the Eagle River descends very quickly until it hits Edwards, and then it really slows down. That's actually considered a lake area right there, and it's very deep, and so the river just naturally, when the river slows down, it drops whatever it's carrying. So we think that it's just dropping all the tires that were thrown in upstream for decades, right in that area. I mean, they found Model T tires, and huge semi tires. They also think that maybe people were using them to armor the banks, where they were seeing erosion problems. They've already piled up since we collected all those in April. They've already collected more. That pile is significant. I would say 100 to 200 more. So we're working with those folks that are pulling them out to come up with a plan and a date for removal again. So if that sounds really exciting to you, we'd welcome you to come out with us for the day. Yeah. And then we maintain all of our past projects with irrigation, noxious weed removal, and check for plant mortality. The Eagle River Community Water Plan. This is an effort we started a year and a half ago. We're planning to wrap up this planning process and have a plan out by the end of 2020. This really is aimed at balancing all the uses of water within the valley. So agricultural uses, recreation, the environment, drinking water, our economy, all of the ways that it's used, making sure that we're planning for the future, in a future that we know we're going to see continued population growth, drier climates, hotter climates, and really running scenarios based upon different climate scenarios and different population growth scenarios. Also keeping in mind that we know that there's water supply planning projects coming our way, that Aurora and Colorado Springs are planning to look at ways to develop water within our valley, and we have an agreement already. Our valley, or the Western Slope, has an agreement with those Front Range entities to develop 30,000 acre-feet of water within our valley still. So we are working and sitting around the table with Aurora and Colorado Springs and other stakeholders from this side to come up with a plan that works for everyone and make sure that everyone's water uses are fulfilled and that we're planning properly. And this also, the community water plan, is a stream management plan, which the state mandated or set a goal of having stream management plans on 80% of locally prioritized streams by 2030. So we are helping the state to meet that goal through this planning process. And we have about 65 people that participate in this effort. The Eagle River cleanup and the highway cleanup are two of our events. We have about 1,300 people that come out and volunteer between the 2 days. And between those two events, we clear 25,000 pounds of trash from our highways and rivers every single year. So obvious value in having these programs, and it's a lot of trash that's being put down every year. All right, our Land and Rivers Fund. This is a great way to support the Watershed Council and the Land Trust all at one time. All of these businesses participate in the Land and Rivers Fund. There's about 30 of them right now, and it's growing every day. Sue Nicolai is our manager of this program, and how it works is you go into one of these businesses that participate, they add 1% onto your bill at the register, and then all of those funds are divided equally between the Land Trust and the Watershed Council for our restoration projects, education programs, etc. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The most exciting part of this. We are, for the first time ever, offering a scholarship to a graduating senior from Eagle County that wants to go into the natural resource fields. It'll be the first time this year, so we're very excited about that, and that we're to a point where we can share some of these funds. We also have the intention of, once we are raising $100,000 from this program annually, we will create a community grant program so that other entities within the valley, whether it's Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or a church group that's doing land or river conservation efforts, and protection programs, they can receive some of the funds from us as well. Other ways that you can support the Watershed Council, we do have a River Lover membership program. We also have a business partner program, which Vail Board of Realtors is one of our business partners, and then our annual giving efforts. As I said, we're trying to expand and add another staff person that can really address these water quality concerns throughout the valley. So if you are making a donation on Eagle County Gives or Carter Gives Day and looking for a nonprofit to share your funds with, please keep us in mind. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. And I just want to share a list of our board and our staff. Our board, we are losing 3 board members this year. 2 are term limited and 1's moving out of the valley. We actually are having our board meeting later today, and we have 7 people that are interested in joining our board right now. So next time when I come back, you'll probably see a much longer list of board members. And that's all I had for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
You mentioned like upcoming, you're looking at like a 30,000 acre feet of storage here in the near future. 30,000, is that what you said? 30,000 acre feet?
Well, we're not looking at
No, but in Front Range that has waterways to it.
they
30,000?
get 20,000 and 10,000 will be developed to stay on the western slope.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily one project. That could be a lot of smaller projects.
So in the next, say, 3 to 5 to 10 years, where would that most likely be located for that size of water storage?
Currently the big one that they're looking at is Whitney Reservoir, which is just downstream of Homestead. It would actually be in the Homestead Valley. But other ones that have been on the table are an expansion of Eagle Park Reservoir, which is above Camp Hale, and then people always talk about Walcott, although I don't think that that's very high in likelihood.
Would that more likely be one large expansion or multiple little ones?
I think it would be multiple little ones. Maybe an expansion of Eagle Park and maybe Whitney Creek, something like that. But Whitney would require moving the wilderness boundary. So we're very engaged in the conversation and using the community water plan process to have those conversations. And we most likely will be having a public meeting to share this information with the public in January or February. So if you join our newsletter list, then you'll receive notification when that meeting is. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
What are the repercussions of those new, I mean, is it bad?
I mean, not necessarily. It depends on if we're all having the conversation together and planning it well and thinking about our future with the population growth and the climate change and making sure that everyone's uses of the water are really being considered and protected. Because, let's get out of it.
There's a lot of speculation and development going in South Minturn, and I was wondering if the Bolts Lake and South Minturn disturbing that soil is going to lead to a lot more contamination of water upstream, so that the, unfortunately, that has some consequences downstream.
No, I mean, they've, the EPA and CPHE, they've done all the monitoring work to make sure that that's not going to disturb those soils and
For future development.
and there's internal controls within that development where people aren't allowed to dig holes and plant trees. So there's a lot of noise around all of that. But we'll see how that develops. Any other questions?
What about overall water conservation? Goes out there in the public talking about how the individual homeowners can help with water conservation.
Or we out there?
Yeah, there's somebody out there discussing, how we can, as the general public, can help with just overall water conservation. Just keep waters in streams.
Yeah, we do a little bit on water conservation. I mean, a lot of our focus is on the water quality side and river health side, but obviously there's impacts to the rivers also from water conservation. And we have been looking at programs to do more education on landscaping because that's really where the greatest use is and where you can have the greatest impact. A lot of water providers will tell you that the water you use inside your house, anywhere from 90 to 99% of that gets back into the stream through their processing. But it's the water that you put on your lawn and your landscaping that is lost to the system and doesn't make its way back to the river. So that's where you can have the greatest gains. And so the Watershed Council does do efficient landscaping workshop, rain barrel workshops, and other educational programs like that, but it's not as big of a focus for us as the water quality pieces right now. But we have a staff of 4, so. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all for your time today, and happy holidays.
It's good. So thank you guys for the opportunity. It's fun to come in and talk with you guys once a year, and some of you more often than that, Betsy. So as we're going through here, if you guys have questions for me, let me know. This is a very similar format for those who have attended in the past. We're going to look through the macroeconomic environment, what's happening, a big picture economic basis that really does impact our local real estate market and second homeowner market, also our tourism market. We'll look at local workforce trends, air service update. There's a lot going on at the airport if you haven't been out there, and a lot more to announce in the next couple weeks. Spoiler alert. And a little bit of a programming update of all the things we have going on at Vail Valley Partnership. So if you guys have questions, it'll be a more interesting conversation than if I talk to you for 45 minutes. So Doug knows that. So ask questions. So macroeconomic, what's going on? And we'll make sure Mel has this to share with you guys so you don't have to take pictures and notes or anything else. But big picture trend-wise, what's happening? Some of the things that we watch pretty closely, the Consumer Confidence Index, and you see that is last year, this is this year. So consumer confidence was kind of mapping last year and then has fluctuated quite a bit. We're in a little bit of a dip on consumer confidence. A lot of different factors for that. Global politics, national politics, just uncertainty doesn't bode well for the market. And there's lots of uncertainty right now. Dow Jones, on the other hand, last year, this year, last year, this year, so the Dow Jones continues to do well. So we have some conflicting macroeconomic factors. Again, uncertainty is not generally our friend, right? But this continues to track in a pretty good year over year overall, and our change year over year continues to go up on the Dow. So that's a good sign. So when we take all these different macroeconomic factors, the yellow bar is the change in year over year, the pink is the current year, and the blue is the prior year. And this is an index of 40 or 50 different economic indicators. So it's really similar to the Dow Jones in that regard. It's not tracking any one thing, it's tracking an aggregate of a number of different things. And we saw last year huge growth, right? And pretty consistent over time. This year it's pretty level, but still above last year. So it's again, I think a good sign. It's not really sustainable to do this every year in perpetuity, right? So the flattening out isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're still above last year, Big picture wise, things are uncertain but okay, right? Unemployment, we'll look at Eagle County's unemployment a little bit later, but nationally, unemployment continues to be at near record lows. There are significantly more jobs available nationwide than there are people to fill those jobs. Unemployment at around 3.5% is full employment. Economists would tell you that that's full employment. Locally, we'll have a slide on this later, but the most recent data that came out from the state, we're at 1.6% unemployment in Eagle County. 2,800 open positions, less than 400 people looking for jobs. Face tattoo territory, Doug. If you have a face tattoo, you could probably get a consumer-facing job.
I'm just thinking about which you'll hit on.
I'm sure I probably will. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about housing.
Right, and then the low unemployment, which is really great at 14 months. But we'll get to it.
Save that question. I don't encourage you to go get a teardrop face tattoo. Other face tattoos, you still have a shot. Local workforce trends, and we'll dive into that a little bit. So that's kind of the macro. Looking at what does Eagle County look like from a more localized standpoint. Our population continues to grow, just over 55,000. Some of that obviously in the Roaring Fork Valley, not just in this valley. We have all of this at vailvalleybusiness.com. You can sort by town or county for every, including Edwards, which obviously is not a town. But you can search the dozens of different demographic reports and economic reports by town or by Eagle County, and you can compare and contrast them, download them to PDFs, send them off to people that might be interested, etc. That's all at the data center at vailvalleybusiness.com. Labor force. The unemployment rate here is a little bit higher than what I just mentioned because newer information's been released since this updates on a monthly basis. But our labor force consists of over 35,000 people in the workforce. Unemployment rate, very low. Again, 3.5% is considered full employment. So it's not necessarily a great thing for the community to have 2,800 open jobs and 400 people looking for jobs. Unemployment graphed over time. The red is the labor force, the blue is Eagle County's unemployment, and the green is Colorado unemployment. Colorado has one of the lowest unemployment rates of any state. When we talked about kind of 3.5, 3.6 nationally, Colorado's unemployment rate is right around 3%, and we hover 1.6 to 2.5 depending on seasonality and other factors. I used this last year, I'll use it again this year, probably use it again next year. Number one, because Farside is incredible, it is actually coming back for those who are fans. But the idea of this is the Mid-Vail School for the Gifted, and you've got this kid pushing on the door when the sign says pull. And what's the point with that? To Doug's point, one of the research projects the partnership does through our partnership with Eagle County and in economic development is looking at an annual workforce study. That's available on our website if you're really looking to cure insomnia and put yourself to sleep at night. We've got years of history on this that we can benchmark, etc. But one of the questions we ask in our workforce study is a complete open-ended question, and it's what are the barriers to growth in the local economy? And not surprisingly, high cost of living, housing, duh. housing, and the complex equation of looking for professional people and being able to afford to pay them. I don't know that it's that complex. It's pretty straightforward. The high cost of living, I guess when you make it more complex than maybe it is. High cost of living, career pathways, etc. But it's interesting, this is one out of, I think this had 5 pages of open-ended responses. It was just interesting, the first page was almost all housing. The other pages are almost all housing too, but we can beat that horse as much as we need to. I think you guys know, and this kind of shows that when you ask the business community their feedback and what is your barrier to growth, they immediately go to housing. There's others, we'll talk about some of them, housing, healthcare, early childhood, transit, and transportation being the kind of the 4 main buckets. But it ties directly to this, which I think starts to get to Doug's question before, is employment by industry and wage. And unfortunately, this is a little bit outdated, but it hasn't changed significantly. It actually hasn't changed significantly in over 10 years. And it's employment by industry and wage. So to help you guys read this a little bit, these are based off of state numbers. They're not my numbers. I didn't define what was low wage and what was medium wage, and what was high wage. I would opine that that's not a high wage, especially given our cost of living. But I don't get to make the definitions. That said, for those on this side of the room, I was saying that might not be a high wage in Eagle County. But when we look at our industry makeup of where are the jobs, what is the employment in Eagle County, driven by accommodation and food service, arts and recreation, retail trade, these are lower wage jobs. These are seasonal jobs, maybe people shifting back and forth, and obviously construction, real estate, health services, professional and technical services, the green being the more high wage positions, the red being more the low wage positions, and you see we skew a little bit towards the red, but that's the makeup and that's the mix of what the jobs look like. We update this as we get the data from the state. It's just, unfortunately, it's a lagging indicator. And so when we look at the employment change, and again, 2 years, data from 2 years ago, but again, these trends haven't necessarily changed significantly over time. What we're looking at here is a baseline of 0. And again, green is high wage, the blue is mid-wage, and the red is low wage. Where's the growth in jobs coming from, right? So growth in jobs, interestingly enough, local government leads the way, followed by construction and retail, accommodations, transportation, warehousing, etc. And where are we losing jobs? We're not really losing a lot of jobs, right? That one huge one that you see on wholesale trade is probably one organization that moved a whole bunch of jobs out of Eagle County on a shipping kind of type thing. That's when you see these huge numbers, that's more of an outlier, one driven by one thing versus things that have more jobs that you see there. So interesting to see where the growth and where the decline might be coming from, although there's not a whole lot in decline. So when we look at, again, Eagle County and the trends impacting us here locally, one of the things that we look at is where is our population change coming from? And you see here, the blue is natural increase. Those are births. That's birth rate in the county. And the red is net migration of people coming to the county or leaving the county. So how many people leave, how many people come, what's the net, right? So when we look, since the recession in 2009 forward, our growth, when people comment on growth in Eagle County and traffic and whatever else you might hear about on Eagle County classifieds or whatever else, letters to the editor, Well, if we don't want to grow, quit having babies. That's the response. The data would say all of our growth since 2009, 2008 has come from people having babies. It's not coming from people moving here. It's not coming from relocation. It's coming from people who are here, who are growing their families, people who are here, who are staying after high school, after college, etc., and staying here. So, FYI, the more you know, our growth is coming from us. We're not having a mass influx of people coming from New York and Chicago and Dallas and every place else to become part of our workforce, to become part of the community on a year-round basis. This is all obviously year-round residents, right? It's not seasonal residents. These are year-round things, and so probably wouldn't have been the assumption of an average crowd. You guys are probably above average, but I know some of you are above average, Bill.
Chris, do you anticipate that may change in the next, the next subset? Or do you think it'll still look the exact same?
I think we're going to start seeing a little more of a natural net increase. I think we're going to start seeing a natural net increase, and when we get the updated data, we'll report it out. But I do think we'll start seeing, I do think we'll start seeing a little more like this versus, I think that was an anomaly, that was the bottom of the recession. But I think we'll start seeing things like this, where a huge majority of our growth is still coming from us, natural birth rate, and the red being on the upper side rather than the lower side. But that still shows that the majority of our growth is coming from people who are already here in Eagle County and people who are staying in Eagle County versus people relocating here. The simple reason being, most of our jobs, most of our business growth is not coming from recruiting businesses here, right? Let's play a hypothetical. Hey Doug, you want to bring your business here? Pretty awesome. Let me tell you about our business environment in Eagle County. Okay, we have 1.6% unemployment. We have land that's super expensive. We have huge shipping challenges and transit and logistical challenges. We have real workforce challenges. Come on, and no incentives from government to open a business. Welcome, right? Our growth is going to come from people who are here who decide to be entrepreneurs and who decide to start their own business and who decide that they're here, they don't necessarily see a huge career path forward, so they want to start their own thing. They start their own nonprofit, they start their own business, they start their own professional service. That's where our job growth is coming from, is people who are already here who are developing their own thing versus people who just decide this is an incredible place to do business. And we're working on trying to make this a better place to do business, but it's a really hard place to do business. And no matter what we at the partnership or the county or the towns do, this will always be a really hard place to do business. So we need to be as welcoming as we can and build programs and support, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, to help encourage people to come here and bring jobs here. But you look across the mountain communities in totality, and you see more businesses of scale leaving than coming, right? Smartwool is leaving Steamboat, has left Steamboat, to move to Denver with VF Corp. But you've got others who are backfilling it, but more organically than on a recruiting model. So long answer to your question, but I think we'll see a little more of this than we will. This is an anomaly, right? But we're not going to see this. I would be shocked if we see this in my lifetime, right? It's just, that was a different time. 1990 to 1999, like 3,500 people, new people in the county in 1 year. I don't think we're going to see that, right? I don't think we're going to see that again. But I do think we're going to see that small, incremental net migration. Historical population trends. This looks across a variety of counties around the region. And again, a little bit hard to read, but Eagle County, Garfield County, Lake County, Pitkin County, Summit County, and Colorado as a whole. Interestingly, all of these mountain communities are growing at a smaller, slower rate than Colorado as a whole, right? Which again, might not be the narrative that you necessarily think of. When you look at Eagle County, less than 1% annual average percentage change in growth. That's a fairly sustainable growth pattern, right? Less than 1% growth a year that's not unrealistic, that's not unfathomable. And again, we saw on the earlier slide where that's coming from. But then you look at some of these with really flat growth rates, and you look at Colorado as a whole and how we're growing along the Front Range primarily, that impacts us as well. The other interesting thing is we're seeing a huge increase in our aging population. So population age 65 plus by county, again, I think it's interesting to look at this across the mountain region rather than just Eagle County on its own. So in 2015, our population above 65 in blue and in red by 2030. Driven by aging in place, right? Some of you are doing the math right now. In 11 years, will I be part of that red number? Or you're already there.
Way beyond.
Or you're already there. You didn't have to do the math. You didn't have to do the math. So what impact does that have on us? And as you guys, from a real estate standpoint, look at this, what does it mean when our population is aging in place? It means people who, this gap of about 6,000 people who are currently in the workforce, who live in workforce housing, might not be in the workforce, and still in their house. You know, not all of them, but it has repercussions for an aging population. And what does it mean, and how do we backfill some of the housing supply that's needed to support our businesses and to support economic vitality for our community as a whole? It's important to recognize the impacts that an aging population has, on top of maybe what that means for things like Castle Peak Senior Center and healthcare and everything else.
Chris, do you know what the population would be in 10 years, approximately, that older population would be of the total? So for 55,000?
I have that, but I don't know it off the top of my head. 2030, the population for Eagle County, I think, is forecast to be in the mid-60,000. We're 55 right now. I think by 2030 is probably forecast to be 62-ish.
12,000 or 13,000 old.
Define old.
About 65.
You could be old but still immature.
About 65.
Yeah, no, understood. Will it be a bigger, your question, will that be a bigger percentage than it is today? And the answer is yes. It'll be a bigger percentage of our population than it is today. Right? Although our population will be higher, it won't be that drastically different graphically on the percentage as a whole, but it will be a bigger percentage than it is today. Migration by age, and this one is really outdated because this comes out every year with the census. So next year when the census happens, we'll get updates of this. But this is a pretty common net migration by age. So what we're looking at now is, for Eagle County, what is our in and out migration by age. So this is not natural increase, this is not birth rate consideration, this is just people who move to Eagle County or leave Eagle County at a given age, zeroed out. So 0 would be the same number of people leaving Eagle County as coming to Eagle County. To no surprise, we see a huge jump between age about 20 and 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. What's that? No more than 4 years.
Yeah, drops right there.
So you've got at age 21-ish, 22, 23, 24, 25, you know, by around age 30, we see a pretty good net loss of people. And again, for all the reasons you guys know, it's just interesting to see it graphically displayed of what does that mean for community, what does that mean for businesses and for workforce, and for how do we retain the talent that we have in Eagle County, knowing that we're probably never going to retain people at this level, and it probably wouldn't be sustainable if we tried to. But what's a more realistic number? This shows a huge brain drain away from Eagle County, right? A lot more people leaving than coming during those prime workforce years of 30 to fill in the blank, 65 plus. So again, interesting to see. I don't expect that this is going to change a lot when we get the new census data. In fact, I bet it's even a little worse, based on the other data we saw with a lot of people leaving and not that net migration. But I think in time, we'll start to move that past age 30, where we're able to retain people for a little bit longer. I think that would be a really good metric for the county and a lot of the stakeholders to measure how are we doing at retaining people. There's a lot of people starting businesses, and how do we support those businesses? How do we retain them in the community to support the entire community, right? So back to some stuff from our workforce study. Average length of time positions remain open until filled. And I've got a couple different charts here that kind of help tell the same story. Years worth of history. We have additional history online that isn't on here. We've been doing this report, I think, for 14 years now. Average length of time positions remain open until they're filled. And you see 1 week, 2 to 4, 1 week, 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 3 months, 4 months or more. Almost 65% of jobs stay open for more than 2 months. Consider the impacts of that and the pressure that puts on the people who are working places that have open jobs, unfilled positions, extra shifts needed to be taken, the impact that has on family and community and everything. It's jobs staying open for more than 2 months. There's probably some of that is employers dragging their feet and not making decisions. There's probably a bigger percentage of that, 65, that is not finding the right skill level, or just not being able to have the number of bodies applying for jobs.
What would you say is the desired split if you were to?
Right here, 2 to 4 weeks. 2 to 4 weeks. 1 week, people filling jobs in 1 week, I don't know who that is. No, I mean, I don't know what jobs are being filled in 1 week. It's probably employers who know exactly who and what they're doing, and they're posting a job because they have to, and they already know that they want to hire Corey. So Corey applies, they keep the job posted, and they, for the 48 hours or 72 hours that they're required to, by their internal policies, and they already know who they want. That's that 6%, right? Because I don't know anyone, how do you interview people, make a decision? Like, you can't do that in 1 week unless you know that you want it. 2 to 4 is a realistic time frame in a healthy environment. Over 2 to 3 months or 4 months or more is a problem. And again, part of it being the business's problem, right? But most of it being not finding the right skill set, not having the skilled workers, etc. And you see how this changes over time as well. Look at 2013, 2012, 2013 as examples, 2013, 14, as we were coming out of the recession, right? we weren't at in the down time when no one was really hiring. This is as we come out of it. 3 out of 4 businesses or 7 out of 10, we're finding those positions in that 3 to 4 week time frame. That's a realistic kind of healthy environment. That was a good time from businesses were adding jobs, filling jobs that maybe had been left open during the recession, growing. That's not super healthy. Interesting. Number of unfilled positions at your company. 31% have more unfilled positions than they did last year. So keep this in mind because, again, like I said, there's a story here that kind of shows over these couple slides. But 31% of businesses have more unfilled positions. And how many new positions do you anticipate adding in a couple of years? What this tells you is how businesses are planning to grow, right? So, 31% of businesses have open jobs. The number of open jobs are increasing. More open jobs than last year at 31% of businesses. And 60% of businesses, 59, plan to add between 1 or 4 positions. So 30% have open jobs. 75% plan to add jobs. How good at math are you, Doug?
Hold on, now I'm getting really good.
I don't know that you need to be good at math to know that that's not good, right? So if 3 out of 10 have more open jobs and 76% plan to add jobs, 60% plan to add 1 to 4. Almost 8% plan to add more than 10 jobs. There are a lot of businesses, and those are probably not tourism-based jobs. Those are logistics jobs, those are manufacturing jobs, those are things like the High Country Cultures kombucha company and some of those Quiet Cat and the businesses that are in the outdoor manufacturing or related to some of those types of industries that are looking to grow and are growing, trying to grow pretty quick. They can't find people. Is the number of unfilled positions increasing? Number of unfilled positions at your company, and green is last year and red is this year. And so again, more people with unfilled positions at their company. Again, a theme across these, but it's really tough for businesses. And again, not all tourism-related businesses. We're not talking about necessarily retail stores and restaurants, although that's about half of our market here. We're also talking about outdoor manufacturing. We're talking about professional services, plumbers, electricians. Talk to any professional service business. You guys probably deal with them a fair amount when you have transactions of needing an electrician or a drywall installer or a plumber to come in and do some work. You're laughing because you know it's true. It's hard. You better build those relationships so that you even get a call back. Because if you don't have the relationships, they're probably not even going to call you, right? Because their workload is 2, 3, 4 months out. So when we ask businesses, what is your experience in finding employees? 1 is terrible, 7 is excellent. And again, green is last year, red is this year. Availability of workers, yeah, we don't really have any. 3 on a scale of 7. The quality of the workforce improved a little bit this year. Stability of the workforce declined a little bit this year. People are job hopping and, on a 7-point scale, back to your earlier question in a different context, on a 7-point scale, we have nothing that ranks fair. Everything's below fair. 3.1, 3.8, 3.1. Not really ideal from a business growth standpoint, from a community sustainability standpoint, from an economic vitality standpoint, when you don't have the availability or the quality of the workforce that you really want in a community that's built around service. Even our non-tourism businesses are built around service, professional service. Banks, attorneys, accountants, financial services, etc. Kevin?
Chris, how's the quality workforce, how's that actually measured?
This is asking businesses their opinion. So everyone judges it on their own, right? So you might have a different definition of that than I do. But generally speaking, business people, business owners, managers, etc., are probably more likely to err on the side of, I've got really good people. I mean, you don't hear a lot of businesses saying, you know what, I'm running my business but my people suck. Right? Yet still below fair on the quality of the workforce, right? So the perception of businesses is probably that they've got really good people. But as they try to grow, and we saw the open positions, the time positions remain open, etc., the people they're trying to bring in aren't so good. Not up to the quality of the people they have. Yeah, the warm body theory. Back to the face tattoo territory comment.
How do you think about moving to the consumer confidence?
You know, the consumer confidence is a national level. So it's I don't think it's at all connected to consumer confidence. We do have a question later. I think I put the slide in there that we'll talk to it on a local level. So keep that one. Back to the drivers of experience of the ability to retain people in Eagle County. The things that we measure and have measured for a number of years. Healthcare, childcare, transportation, housing. And again, to your point, Kevin, we don't define what it means. We just ask, what are your employees' experience with these factors? Purple is major frustration. The next one, this red is could be better. Orange is neutral. Blue is pretty good. Green is excellent. I don't know who these 4% of people are. Independently wealthy, 4%.
Or the 3%.
Yeah, or the 3%. They're people who don't have employees maybe, or very many, or they're businesses who bought employee housing units a long time ago and now they're on their books and they're happy with where they are. Similarly, I don't know who the 10% are, they're government employees maybe, who are really happy with their health care. The 6% who think it's excellent are people with childcare, or people who don't have who have kids. No, I'm not being glib about that. Those are employers who are like, I don't hear my employees talk about that at all, because none of their employees have kids, right?
So where's the good news in all of this? I mean, why do people even want to move here in this environment?
Transportation.
Well, why do people want to move here? Because despite this is a good place to be, right? I know we know that, but other people know that too. And the difference with Eagle County, Summit, Route, Pitkin, it's not only here, but since we're here, we'll use Eagle County as the example, is that most everybody has chosen to be here, right? And when you choose to be here for the access to recreation and the lifestyle, for the most part, that's the main attractor of what helps keep people here and try to make a go of it. We have a self-selected tribe, right? It's a self-selected tribe. It's not like Cincinnati, Ohio, where I grew up, or Wichita, Kansas, or even Denver, where you're kind of there because you work for Procter & Gamble. In Cincinnati, like half my friends' parents work for Procter & Gamble, the other half works for Kroger. Right? Like you're there, that's why you're there, and that's a kind of crappy reason to be somewhere. Here, everyone's kind of chosen to be here, and we've chosen to stay and to try and make a go of it. That's why people put up with some of these very real challenges. I know that was kind of a glib question, but it's kind of, sorry, don't get me started. But we're working to address these. When we look year over year at some of these to see the trend lines, we like trend lines, we like to see, you know, you can have little things year over year, but when you look over a number of years, what direction are we moving? Not in real good directions in terms of, again, and this is on a mean rating on a 1 out of 3, 1 being positive and 3, 1 being negative, 3 being positive, and everything below the mean. So some challenges. We asked people if they had $100 to spend, where would they spend their money to solve some of these issues? And you see last year in red, I believe, and this year in green, housing, healthcare, talent attraction, talent retention. The talent attraction one is an interesting, that's maybe the one anomaly on here of where people would spend their money is to attract talent, because we saw the number of jobs, and I think that is simply a matter of business people saying there's not enough people to fill the jobs that exist. We need more people. We need to retain or attract more talent to Eagle County. But it's interesting to see where people would put their resources in finite terms. Corey, this gets, I think, to your question earlier. Indicating the Eagle County economy is better or worse off than last year. So how do people think? We also asked, and I don't have it in here, that's why I was flipping ahead, how they think their business will do relative to the Eagle County economy. Interesting, and next year I'll try and remember to put it in, because here you see a little bit of a trend of people saying Eagle County's economy is getting worse. Not terribly so, but a little bit of a trend moving in the wrong direction. You see the yellow, people saying about the same, kind of stable, and a few more people thinking it's getting better, although a little fluctuation in people thinking that it's getting better. When you ask them about their business, people are much more optimistic. So.
Do you think some of those numbers reflect on smoking? Because in 2016-17, people thought it was a little bit worse than the year before, but that was a horrible, horrible school year.
Yeah.
And then the following year, people thought it was worse because there were so many people that were late getting the snow last year.
Yeah.
Not coming back.
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. We run this report from early May through mid-June, over about a 6-week window where we're soliciting responses from businesses. So it is coming right off after the ski season and could absolutely, but we're asking them to look forward, right? We're not asking how was it this year compared to last year. We're asking what do you think it will be for the upcoming year versus the past year. So snowfall could have an impact on that past year for sure, where people would say, it's gotta be better, right? Or gosh, I don't know how it could be better. But I think snowfall has a factor to it, but I think the bigger factors are the employment and the planned growth and the revenue dollars they had and what they're planning to do a little differently.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
Quick question. You asked the employees or employers in your survey what their average hourly wage is?
We asked them how their wages compare to Colorado as a whole. I don't have this in here, but I can send it out to you.
I'd just be curious to know if
They think they pay more.
They think they pay more.
They don't.
What do you
Yeah,
got?
I know. No, trust me, I know. Yeah.
That's what I was trying to
Well,
get
so
at.
that's a more nuanced answer than that. So our median income in Eagle County is higher than the state average. Our average weekly wage is lower than the state average. So median income takes into account investment income and things like that. Average weekly wage is pure W-2 data, right off of your paycheck stub, right? So it doesn't take into consideration non-W-2 jobs, doesn't take into consideration investments. And our average weekly wage, our economy made up, depending on the methodology you use, between 48 and 62% tourism businesses. So we'll call that 50% tourism businesses in Eagle County. Statewide, it's closer to 13 to 15% tourism businesses. And tourism businesses, on average, pay significantly lower than some other industries. Because we're so dependent.
If you cut out the top employer in the valley, does that change?
Well, you also have many others who are in that tourism and accommodations kind of realm that pay lower than the state average. So what the interesting part is that our tourism businesses pay higher than the state average for tourism businesses. But it's still a much lower wage, right? So on average, at Vail Resorts, our larger
I don't want to
employer,
say it, but.
I'll say it. Or any of the hospitality companies, people are making more than they are at Elitch's, or at Waterworld, right? Or at the Pepsi Center, right? So it's still a really low wage, but it's still higher than the state average for similar industry sectors, right? Where we get hit also, or maybe even more importantly, is that our professional level jobs do not pay what the state averages are. Our tourism jobs pay higher than the state average. Turning lifts on Vail Mountain, you're going to make a higher weekly wage than you are working at Elitch's. Turning amusement park rides. But for professional jobs, non-tourism jobs, our wages are below the state average. So it's an interesting, different way to think about the question. Our average weekly wage is low because 50 to 62% of our businesses are in sectors that pay significantly under the state average weekly wage.
One more question.
Uh-huh.
Average income. Are second homeowners part of that population?
No. Only year-round residents. Only year-round residents. And again, two different metrics. Median income and average weekly wage. Median income, we're 20% above the state. Average weekly wage, we're about 20% below the state averages. So there's a gap. Air service update. Kind of a cool picture of the Eagle County Regional Airport, but I don't know if I want to fly that day. A flight map, 14 direct flight markets to the Eagle County Regional Airport. We'll talk about kind of the service and some of the new things coming up, but you guys probably know this fairly well. This is all available at flyvail.com. Our top visitation markets mirror this map. The places where people can get here easily are the places most people come from. Some of these have great connections as well, international connections, etc. But I would imagine that our second homeowner markets also mirror this flight map because it's easier to get here, makes it a more attractive place to buy a second home, buy an investment property, not just visit. We continue to grow spring and summer service at the Eagle County Regional Airport. So the partnership is the administrator for the EGE Air Alliance. That's a public-private partnership working with the county and Vail Resorts and a lot of the towns and about 80 different businesses around the valley. Some good success stories here. We added spring service to Dallas-Fort Worth. You might have seen that announcement. That begins April 7th through June 3rd. The timing is really, really beneficial. The timing is great, actually. Leaves here at 8:20 a.m., which means you can get to Dallas and can connect to almost anywhere, right? East or west, international, anything out of their hub. Arrives here at 8 o'clock at night, which means if you're coming home or you're visiting from somewhere else, you have lots of connection opportunities in Dallas to get here. If this was the opposite, it would be really terrible, right? Because you would have no connections. If you were leaving Dallas at 8 in the morning and arriving, if you were leaving here at 8 p.m., you're not going anywhere other than Dallas, right? So this flight schedule works really, really well, and that's something we worked with the airline on when we got this service. So this is really good for the local community as well. not just our second homeowner community or our groups and meetings that come during that off-peak season. This is really good for the local community to have that option, so we're not reliant on the Denver service. And then United will have summer service to Chicago O'Hare, right? So our peak summer season, June 19th to August 12th, and again, really great connection times. So the ability in the summer to connect through Denver, connect through Dallas, connect through Chicago, and again, that connection through Chicago opens up a lot of options because that's a hub for United. So really great momentum at the airport with regards to service. Some more announcements soon on other opportunities that we're working on. Again, looking at trends over time, this is just Q1. This is Q1 at the airport, dating back to 2016 through forecasted 2020 on the arriving seats. So what are we looking at? Again, trends being growth, a little fluctuation, big growth, a little bit, but still up significantly from that 2016 baseline. So that's a really good thing to have more seats coming in. There's aircraft, there's other components that come into that, but arriving seats continues to be pretty stable / growing over the past number of years. Hard to read, probably, but I'll go through some of the top things, and again, we're happy to share this with you. The top markets, the top is New York, LaGuardia, JFK, Newark. So this is also connecting flights, right? This is wherever someone originates, their stay, or they land in Eagle, they originated somewhere. 232 people a day from New York. Not bad, right? South Florida, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, Southern California because they have 1 million airports, Houston, etc. So interesting, again, just to see, it probably impacts you guys. These are probably where your second homeowners and investor property folks are coming from. Not all inclusive, but for the most part, the data would say we know this is where people are visiting from. The airport terminal, if you've not been out to the airport yet, I'm cognizant I'm running out of time. If you've not been out to the airport yet, get out there. Huge project. From 95,000 square feet to 120,000 square feet. Really just a whole list of improvements. Interestingly, at least interesting to me, is the pet relief area.
Yeah.
And now you'll know, this will be a good cocktail party trivia for you. If you accept federal money, and most of these airport terminals and projects are paid for with federal money. The huge majority of it is paid for with federal money. You need to put it in pet relief areas. Otherwise, you don't get any federal money.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
So now you know. So a little bit about what's going on at the partnership and our economic development efforts. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. If you guys have questions, please reach out. This is not a sales pitch. This is just, there's a lot going on, and it's important, I think, for you guys to have an idea because of your networks and the people you talk to. Vail Valley Works. This is a program we recently launched, an umbrella program for workforce. We have a 3-year rollout for this program. It consists of some of our current programming that I'll talk about that's aimed at our future workforce, apprenticeships and internships. 3 different community leadership programs that we're doing, the Community Leadership Academy, the Next Vail Valley Emerging Leader Program, and a new program next year called the Community Issues Boot Camp that will be exploring 8 different community issues, some of which you saw before: housing, healthcare, transportation, childcare, but also water, also mental health, some of the other issues that are impacting our community. It's a 6-month program with 8 courses. We're limiting that to about 18 to 20 people. So it's a real in-depth, we expect 2 to 3 hours for each of those courses with regional and statewide experts on those topics to give people a deeper scope into some of the challenges and opportunities we have in Eagle County. That's just 2020, 2021, 2022, other affiliate programs and business support services and other things under this idea of how do we address our workforce challenges and our professional development and leadership challenges that businesses are telling us are important to them. Youth apprenticeships, that's our CareerWise Youth Apprenticeship Program. Last year when I talked to this group, we were in year 1, we had 5 apprentices. Now we're in year 2, we have 19 apprentices, we have 12 businesses. We're adding 16 new apprentices next year. This is a 3-year program that will get people to, by the end of that 3-year program, those start as high school juniors, they finish their year after college, they'll have the opportunity to have their associate's degree and a professional career pathway in the Valley, in 5 different pathways that we have set up at or above the average weekly wages in the community. So mid $50,000 career-oriented positions at 20 years old, not so bad. Next, Vail Valley is our Emerging Leader Program. This is something we've done for a number of years. It's a 6-month leadership program, meeting with established community leaders. It's had rave reviews from people who have participated in it. The Mountain Healthcare Coalition, I'm not sure if Vail Health has talked to you guys yet. I think they were on the agenda first thing this morning. They may or may not have mentioned this. He said he was going to give it to me. Good. So maybe I'll spend a little more time on it than I was planning to. But this is a partnership between the partnership and Vail Health. If you've read in the newspaper anything with the healthcare purchasing alliances that have been popping up, primarily the Peak Health Alliance in Summit County that has expanded into the southwest part of the state, Garfield County, Grand County. We're doing the same thing here. We've engaged a full actuarial study to look at where are Eagle County residents getting their health care? Eagle County, Garfield County, Summit County, Denver Metro, and other Colorado. And then looking at what is the cost for 400 different cost codes at Vail Health versus Valley View, Summit, Denver Metro aggregate, and the rest of Colorado aggregate, to understand what are the opportunities we have to increase local utilization and lower pricing. Get more people to use local services and have it be at a lower price, so that we're driving, theoretically, try to drive volume and lower pricing. Like when you look at a hotel, to do provide an analogy that makes sense for a lot of people, you can raise your rates or you can increase your occupancy. What we want to, and at the end of the day, your goal is to maximize your efficiency of your operation. We're working with them to target how do we lower the rates significantly in some cases, in many cases, and increase the local utilization so the hospital can still operate and provide some of the niche services that they do, cardiac and that kind of thing. So this is a huge math problem. We've engaged an actuarial company out of Denver, working with the state, and we plan to have a product on the marketplace in 2021. We need to have rates to the state by the end of March, to be approved by August, to go through the process to be on the market in November. It takes the state 9 months to approve any recommended policy thing. But the Mountain Healthcare Coalition is our take on the Peak Health Alliance, and I'm confident we'll have a very impactful impact on insurance pricing, because we also have the insurance companies at the table. I'm talking to them. It's a deeper discussion. It could be a full hour presentation just on this. If anyone wants to talk about it, let me know. I'm happy to talk about it.
Chris, have you guys had good participation with your health option, not the insurance, that you had people sign up for that one?
Thanks. The One Valley Healthcare Program. So this is our cost-sharing program, not insurance. That includes a preventative plan and a medical cost-sharing for medical events. And yes, we've had, we continue to grow every single month. A lot of your peers are in that program. We have a lot of businesses offering it to their people. It's unique in that it's available to seasonal workers as well as to part-time workers. Businesses who do offer benefits, which is less than 50% of businesses nationally, and best we can tell here is only about 20 to 25% of businesses in Eagle County, although there's not a real good way to measure that, are offering medical benefits to their employees. So this is a program that they can offer for that employee retention and recruitment. And to be honest, and I've said this in the newspaper and other places, in a perfect world, this program doesn't have to exist, right? Like, this is not a silver bullet. We don't pretend it is. In a perfect world, it wouldn't exist. But because of the high price of healthcare and the high price of insurance, this is something that does need to exist until we can fix it at a state level and at a bigger level. And that's what we're attempting to do with the Mountain Healthcare Coalition, is to fundamentally fix it. It just takes a whole lot longer. This is available in the meantime. And it's a good program. We have a couple hundred people on it, and about a dozen businesses offering it to their employees. And expect that number to increase drastically by January 1st.
Because the Colorado Association of Realtors is
Yes,
also, yeah,
correct.
in this spot.
Very similar program. Almost the exact same.
Yeah.
Same partners, a little bit different model. We have more options on the individual unshareable amount, what you might think of as a traditional deductible.
Yeah.
We have 5 tiers, they have 3, but very similar. Smart Business Eagle County, this is our business retention expansion program. We just released about a 38-page report of 3 years worth of business interviews, talking to businesses about their non-tourism related businesses, talking about their pain points, their growth plans, how do we connect them to the business support services that exist. A really unique program, not any other mountain community that I know of that's doing a business retention expansion program like this one. It's a good program that we're able to then share with elected officials at the county and town levels. Here's what non-tourism businesses are saying are restricting their growth and restraining their growth, and what their plans for growth are.
One question, you have the apprentice program for the youth. What about capturing some of the 30-year-olds who are in the valley and apprentice program for 30 to whatever, so they don't leave?
Yeah, that is on the radar for Vail Valley Works in year 2 or 3. Right, so we're in year 1. 2020 will be year 1 of the Vail Valley Works program that I talked about. Future workforce and professional development and leadership programming. We're looking at something for that, for that 30-year-old retraining. That's right. Yep, it's on our radar, but we don't have anything yet. My Partner Career Network, this program is our trailing spouse program. This is one I do want you guys to know about. This is a complimentary program available to anyone in the community. We have a network of about 65 to 80 human resource professionals. We do an informational interview with new people to the community and try to align them with that HR community, where the HR community has agreed to do an informational interview, whether or not they have a position open with any trailing partner or spouse when people relocate here. So it's aimed more at a managerial level, professional level career. Because through our earlier program, what we found by interviewing businesses is that a lot of people were churning at 18 to 24 months because their partner or spouse couldn't find meaningful work or couldn't integrate into the community in a meaningful way. So Betsy loved her job, but her husband hated living here because they couldn't find their niche, they couldn't find their tribe. And again and again that came up. So we developed this program. We have about a 92% placement rate for these people, which is not overly surprising given the business numbers we saw earlier. But if you have people relocating to the valley, you can put their partner or spouse through this program. And we've had people accept jobs in this community simply because the program existed, right? More than one business who have called us that said, that person said the reason that they took the job was because they knew this program existed to help their partner integrate into the community and find work. So it's a really neat program. Would encourage you guys to remember that. I already talked about the Community Issues Boot Camp for next year, and that's all I've got, and I'm over time.
Final speaker for the afternoon, Mike Emhoff, president of the Vail Valley Foundation. And I'm going to give the floor over to Mike, and we'll help with video.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
And I am scheduled till 4.
Yes.
So much to talk about. So, it's actually, I recognize some. We feel quite fortunate we get to do this every year. Before I begin, I would say our board and our staff, you as an industry, as a group, if we look at the Vail Valley Foundation was incorporated in 1981, how you have impacted in what you do for work, how you talk about this valley and how it's differentiated from other communities where someone could buy real estate or create a life that they live in full-time or part-time or second, third, fourth home. We know that what you do and how you advocate for this community and what it offers, a lot of it, we're very lucky we get to be a part of that, but you are out there as extensions of our mission and how we talk about fundraising. And I'm not sure how I would ever do the study, but if we look back at the history of donors of the Vail Valley Foundation, I don't know what the percentage would probably be quite high, that their original introduction was someone like you telling them about not only can you ski and it's a beautiful aesthetic and the quality of life, but here's why this valley's different. And you talked us up. So we are grateful. Don't know how to quantify that value, but I know it's there. So, Vail Valley Foundation, does anyone actually know what our mission is? Just curious.
Yes.
Go.
Oh, arts, athletics, arts, athletics, and education.
Well, yes.
The three of your mission statements.
No, I was asking the real elevator pitch. So the mission of the Vail Valley Foundation has been the same from day one, 1981, and it is to enhance the quality of life in Eagle County for all through arts, athletics, education. That's the mission. It's always been there. Maybe dispel a couple myths or history. Has anyone ever heard Vail Valley Foundation? They are a subsidiary of Vail Resorts. You ever hear that?
Wow.
No. I get it a lot. We are not, but interestingly enough, does anyone actually know the origin of the Vail Valley Foundation? This will be nice cocktail party trivia for you as you go through the holidays. So originally, Vail Associates was looking at how do we look at economic development for this valley. We got these great ski resorts, but how do we put ourselves on a world stage? So they created an event department. And they realized pretty quickly that they were pretty exceptional mountain operators, but when it comes to, call it, non-skiing economic development, big international sport projects, attracting destination guests into the community, they were bad at it. So a gentleman had a great idea to create, well, why don't we look at a way we could take Vail Associates as this privately held company and we spin off this, call it, kind of somewhat independent Vail Associates Foundation. They created that. That lasted only about a year because they realized pretty quickly that the needs of this valley were just exponentially growing, far beyond what they were doing as a ski company. And at that point, enter all kinds of individuals like President and Mrs. Ford, a number of other stakeholders that have been in the valley a long time, and they created the Vail Valley Foundation. So since then, that was about kind of that whole process I just described was like 1979, 1980. By 1981, the Vail Valley Foundation was created as its own separate independent 501c3, its own board of directors. But that's the trivia of how we started. One of the unwritten missions, you guys probably have never heard his name. You know who Mary Frampton is? So he was our chairman of the board for 35 years. He retired, and we have Ann Sneed as our chairman of the board. She's been there for 3 years, a wonderfully talented lady. She was quite the success, the first female systems engineer of IBM, back in the days where the glass ceiling was concrete and steel. And she loves to tell the story of how back then IBM, if you became pregnant, you were compromised. And the handbook of the IBM company basically said you must resign immediately. I'm assuming because pregnancy triggers the brain function stops or something, I have no idea. But Anyway, she's really quite a pioneer and a wonderful woman. We're lucky to have her. One of the unwritten missions of the foundation, it was something Harry Frampton always said we should do. You have the mission, arts, athletics, education. However, the VVF should always play an additional role, and that is to identify need, real need in this county, and then be the convener of individuals, government, and private business to come together and solve those issues where not one person or entity could do on their own. And over time, one of the reasons we don't do that a lot is it's what they call mission creep. It's happened probably half a dozen times, but occasionally there are issues that we're facing in our valley where the Vail Valley Foundation has the ability to bring together all these stakeholders to go fix or help an endemic issue that this valley is facing. Let's see if we can do the video.
Okay.
This will be inspiring for you. I think that's you. Click again and then click the button.
Let's take a look. There we go.
There you go.
The vitality of this valley is directly linked to our commitment to arts, athletics and education. The worth is the character, the soul, the degree to which we can inspire people to want to live and come back here and continue to enrich the community and give it a future.
Fantastic having you here. I'm going to do a hot
Here in the Vail Valley, we were able to put on world-class events. So the entire world gets to look at the job that me and everybody at the foundation, what we do. And that means something, you know, that's pretty special.
A lot here, really buttoned everything up. Tomorrow, we want it to be 100% done.
We really want to have a hand in helping the success of the kids from the very beginning till the time that they're contributing to society in a career.
Exciting for kids to see their teacher in
It's a lot of work. Everything from the maintenance of the theatre, doing the research, booking, having to sell the tickets, find the staff, a full-time team of 12 out of 150 volunteers, 130 events every year, and it's got to look like perfection every night.
There's a lot that goes into our athletic events. We use the example of ducks swim on water. It looks beautiful and graceful, it's smooth, but underneath the surface it's chaos. But the goal is to make sure that people on the outside, the people who come and enjoy what we do, don't see that.
If early childhood education is strong, the rest of their school career is going to be strong. So what we do is very critical.
We become a cornerstone of this community that we play a role in bringing people together. People from all walks of life sitting in the theatre and enjoying entertainment and feeling a connection through that entertainment. That for me is really what drives me.
I get emotional when I talk about it, but I love where I work, right? And it's pretty special at the foundation, but it's more important that I'm with countless other people, with volunteers and donors that share the same passion that I do. And that's what makes Vail Valley Foundation for me. That's what makes it special.
This community is definitely worth all of the time, money, love, effort we put into it, because the people who live here and the people that visit here are what make it the awesome place that it is.
There. That was a marketing plan we started about 18 months ago, and we have all kinds of other short-form video segments that we use for our marketing. It touches on, there's one for mountain games, there's the free music, there's the Whistle Pit Vail, there's the Ford Amphitheater, the dance, the arts. So we have used that, and it's each of our, call it directors or the leadership of the company, kind of telling their story of what they do to put forward the mission every day in the valley. But we've used that for about 1.5 years, and now we're changing it and really looking at it through the lens of our donors. So it's a very similar style kind of video background, but it's our donors that are telling the story of why they came here, why do they find this community unique, and why do they support our organization and others. So it's been really very positive. First on arts, I think most of you, it sounds like most of you are pretty familiar, but under arts and culture of our mission, it's the Vail Performing Arts Center. And just if it's helpful, the VBF is this complex. The way to think of the Vail Valley Foundation is it's a parent company. There are 5 501c3s. So it's this kind of complex structure, but they all ultimately aggregate up to the Vail Valley Foundation. For those of you that are familiar with philanthropy or nonprofits, the Vail Valley Foundation, it's a confusing name in that industry because a foundation implies that effectively there's money that comes into the foundation through institutional grants or individual donors that are somehow aligned to that foundation's, call it, charter. And then the foundation basically grants money out to other nonprofits. That's how, like the Rose Foundation, if you're familiar with that in Denver, the Buell, we're not that. So it's a confusing name. The way to think of it is the Vail Valley Foundation. We are not an endowed organization, meaning we don't, that happens a lot in like big academic institutions. We do not operate under an endowment structure, which means there's not $100 million that was raised and there's money that pulls off of that every year that we then go spend to do our things. And interestingly, although in hindsight's 2020, the reason we do not have that endowment structure is President and Mrs. Ford. Early on, when they were looking at this valley, President Ford had a lot of history with very large kind of institutions, nonprofit institutions, and he felt endowed organizations were inherently lazy, that they could rest on their laurels, and he said, you know, that's maybe fine if you're some 200-year-old institution on the East Coast, but for this community that is growing and diverse and moving at a fast pace, he said we need a nonprofit that's going to address these issues and be opportunistic, nimble, flexible, and just hustle every year. So we're still that today. We're about 24 million a year. Every year we start at zero, raise every dime. So we don't operate under an endowment. I actually think it's a very positive thing. It does keep us on our toes. That said, I don't think anyone thought that the, call it, greatest generation, silent generation, and the baby boomers were going to keep getting older. So when you think of the reality of, call it, a generational change, if you were operating under a really significant endowment, it gives you a little peace of mind that there's resources in the future. So the way we address that as a nonprofit is really not pursuing an endowment, and in fairness, although I'll bore you with nonprofit complexity, the Vail Valley Foundation, because of how we're structured, because of the millions of dollars that come into it specific to the commercial activities, like Mountain View, there's millions of dollars in corporate sponsorship. It makes us kind of non-endowable in terms of how institutions or donors would look at an organization where they contribute to that. So it's not good or bad thing, it just is what it is. But we are really, in the last 2 years, aggressively looking at how do we address estate planning and plan giving? How do we look at these amazing individuals that have been supporting us for 30, 40 years and looking at would they consider us in their estate? So it's a strategy that a lot of nonprofits have. We believe it's important for us. Moving on to arts culture. So under arts and culture, you have the Vail Performing Arts Center that operates on a year-round basis. The Vail Dance Festival falls under that part of the mission. The Gerald R. Ford Amphitheater falls under that part of the mission. The STARS program, which is really this kind of hybrid program between Vail Center and Youth Power 365. That basically takes about 8,000 kids in the county every year and gets them exposed to the performing arts that they would otherwise never have access to. That's just one of 80, 90 different programs we operate. VPAC. Is everyone familiar with the Vail Center, generally? You all know the history of Alberto Vail?
Yeah.
Kind of. Interestingly, I've had a couple of conversations with him during his time away. you can do that. It's, you know, it's a long story, but the way the agreement is structured, the naming rights were in perpetuity. The federal government saw that those funds were legit, so that, you know, the venue will forever be named that. It's pretty rare. 10 years ago, I used to get a lot of people questioning, like, why would you have that? It's pretty rare I get it anymore. But you'll be happy to know he did fall in love while he was in prison with a woman from Spain. He is now released. He's going to move on with his life. So, this is the, I won't take you through all of it, but we have a really exciting winter season coming up for the Vail Performing Arts Center. The way you look at paid performances at Vail, there's about 50 a year that we do during the winter season. There's underground sound, which is the kind of fall seasonal concerts. And then the core winter season, there's about 50 events during the summer. There's somewhere between 12 and 14 paid events. And you may say, gosh, that doesn't seem like, you know, 365 days a year. The reality is when you look at load in, load out, based on different production needs of how much time you need to get in the venue, perform, get out, and then you look at all the other reasons we have the venue is used for rental purposes. There's really about 260 days a year where the venue is just programmed. It's just blocked. Now, there's probably a little room for growth in the summer, during the summer months, but we're also a little careful about making sure we don't cross-program against ourselves. We want to make sure that what's happening at Vail is sensitive to what's happening in Vail with Bravo Vail and the dance festival and other projects. So it's a bit of a logistical planning of when you should have certain concerts. It's good to have like a reggae show the night of opening night of dance. A Norah Jones show that same night is cannibalizing all. So it's we're pretty careful about how we program. Real quickly on stars, we think this is something that started a number of years ago now, and we have, as you know, we have this unbelievably diverse community. We're going to get to it later in the slide, but we just hosted for the first time ever the National Rural Education Conference that was up in Beaver Creek. And this is under our Youth Power 365. And there were 260 attendees representing 26 states, all from rural communities. Now the reality, most people, when they think of the Vail Valley, Vail Beaver Creek, I think their visceral reaction is, what possible problem could you have, right? It's Disneyland. The reality is we have significant issues and very socioeconomically disparate populations. When it gets into the education side, there's all kinds of weirdness in terms of what the state pays for, what it doesn't. Little trivia for you. For some reason, Eagle County, it just corrected itself a year ago, but about 14 years ago, we realized that kindergarten was not paid. And it's really unusual. In almost every state, and certainly in Colorado, most counties, kindergarten is paid for by the state, not here. So for us, we saw that as a need. And for 13 years, after I think $3.8 million of our subsidy, we have been funded and ensuring that every child in the county can go to kindergarten. And the reason we do that is what they call the achievement gap problem, which is, one, if you're not getting preschool, and then you're not getting kindergarten, and then you're showing up, literally your first exposure to formalized academics is first grade, you are at a detriment, significant detriment. So having preschool programming, having kindergarten, is really this ability for us to level the playing field by first grade. So good news is the state finally corrected that kind of ordinance, and now that it's paid for, which is really very helpful. STARS is, you know, not so much academic STEM type topics, but it's really taking these young people that would, let's be honest, a lot of them are never going to go see the ballet, or classical music, or a rock show, or magic, or Broadway, or the Nutcracker. What we do is we program normal performances that you all may like and see and go and pay, and we structure the artists to come in for extra time. And then basically we have them perform at the bar, and then the next day they stay. And we bring all the Eagle County kids into the theater, and it's really just so powerful. Has anyone ever seen it? It's super interactive, the kids go crazy, the theater's full every time. The artists are very much kind of Q&A and include them in what they're doing. And who knows, there's no, can I quantify the return on that? Probably not. In our hearts, what we believe is who knows what kid's going to be inspired to pick up an instrument or decide to pursue graphic art or just be inspired by that and make the performing arts a part of their life. So on to the Gerald R. Ford Amphitheater. Again, the way this is it's a complex structure for us. Technically, we own and operate the Gerald R. Ford Amphitheater. However, the land is the town of Vail's. Now, ultimately, I think it's in 2047, the operating and lease agreement with the town of Vail would be up for renewal. And for some reason, if they were like, we're taking it back or VDF's done, that asset is really the town of Vail's. No different than like Red Sandstone School, which is operated by the school district. Ultimately, that is a dirt physical asset of the town of Vail. So is the Ford Amphitheater. And, you know, we think we've done right by the asset. We've programmed it well. We've put about $24 million of capital improvement into it since I think it's 31 years now in operation. And we believe that the Ford Amphitheater is just one of those amazing, iconic differentiators of this valley. In the summer, it's amazing, right? It's like Cheers, the bar, right? Just the place that people go. We've been working really hard to maximize programming at the Ford Amphitheater for many years. You know, you're all familiar, there's Bravo Vail. They've been operating there for a very long time. Our dance project's been there. We've had things like Hot Summer Nights for 30 years. But when you look at the summer total number of months, call it Memorial Day in the mid-September, there were a lot of open days. So we've been working very hard to increase our programming. One of the ways we've done that is through what you all remember as Whistle Pig. Anyone, has anyone been to a Whistle Pig show? It's good?
Yep.
This was inspired by a community survey we did combined with epic failure. And it was a survey we did where we learned from Eagle County that the number one thing people wanted when we asked the question, what do you feel the valley needs more of? The answer was significant iconic rock pop performances, like big, like Red Rocks type stuff. Some of you may remember this. So we tried to address it originally with this project called Kaboo, which was this massive kind of multi-artist big festival like Bonnaroo or things like that, Coachella type concept. It went down in flames, all kinds of reasons, won't bore you, but when we came out of the ashes of that, what we realized is, all right, I think a festival concept's wrong, but what we need is fill in those dates at the amphitheater that are open. Look at what are our assets in the state of Colorado, and the biggest one is AEG Live, which is the unbelievable powerhouse in the music industry in the United States. In the state of Colorado, let's be honest, they are the monopoly. I mean, they have control over all of the big headliner, what you think of as kind of more contemporary rock pop. They've got Fiddlers, they've got Red Rocks, the Paramount, Boulder Theater. They have this unbelievable buying power. So we decided, over the years, the Vail Valley Foundation has done some shows. We had Santana a long time ago, Bob Dylan. We've dabbled in this music promotion. 80% of the time, we maybe broke even or we lost a lot of money on it. Because the reality is you either live in the world of music promotion or you don't, and we don't. To know who those artists are, who their agents are, how do you get the right price for the artist, all the lighting and sound and production expertise. It's just type of stuff we don't have. So we came up with an idea of collaborating with AEG Live, with Vail Valley Foundation Ford Amphitheater, and that's what's been these shows you're now seeing. And the good news is it's allowing us access to these amazing artists that are routing through the Front Range And then we get there. Okay, let's be honest. AEG Live has the ability, I use one that we're considering right now is John Legend, right? Be a lot of fun to have him. We're hopeful that he'll confirm soon for this coming summer. John Legend grosses about $440,000 per show. So for him, his agent would say, that's my fee, right? You gotta pay me that, I'm good, I'll come, do a good job. The Vail Valley Foundation in that space is a no one. His agent will say, it's 400. AEG is going to go to him and say, I'm going to book you at the Hollywood Bowl, and then you're going to route through Salt Lake at our venue there, and then you're going to perform Red Rocks for 2 nights, and then you're going to go to the GRFA, and I'm going to pay you $200. And John Legend's going to go, awesome, right? At which point the economics start to work for the Ford Amphitheater, because ultimately there's only 2,600 seats in that venue. So if you think of simple math, $500,000 to get the artist, take that number, divide it by 2,600, what's the ticket price? You gotta really love that artist, right? If you're gonna, so there's this kind of price range per ticket, but this has been a really great addition to our mission under the arts, and it's a project that we're excited. Next summer will be even better, probably another 9, 10 shows next summer. So we'll be looking forward to announce that to you. Free concerts, we have obviously Hot Summer Nights has been around for 32 years now, amazing. It was like one of the first things we ever did when the Ford Amphitheater opened. And then we also have Showdown Town, which is down in Eagletown Park. Anyone ever been to that? That's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's quite fun, very relaxed. We're contemplating something similar, maybe Mid-Valley, looking at Avon and the Pavilion in Nottingham. We're not quite sure yet, but we're evaluating that. So that's something you could see come online in the future. The Vail Dance Festival, I know I'm biased, right? That project is unbelievable. In this space, it is the greatest dance project in the world. The level of artists that we have, and Damien Wetzel, somewhat familiar name, so he's the artistic director. And it really is that world in New York, that world in the international art space, both in music and in dance. He is the legitimate player, and very similar to what we were describing with AEG, but it's Damien Wetzel and his connection to those artists that allow us to have the most amazing people come and be part of that festival. And for, events tend to have a life cycle. The dance festival has been operating now for, this will be our 32nd year coming up, and about 3 years ago, not only were we kind of doing okay, this thing is just taking off. I mean, it's just growing in leaps and bounds, and ticket sales every year are at record levels. So I think it tells us a little bit about our constituents as well, that the people that are in our community really are hungry for the arts, and more than just what I think of as the core athletic desire to be in the valley. So we're hopeful that we'll make 50 or 60 years on the dance festival. It also helps that Damien is the president and CEO of Juilliard, which allows us this interesting funding system into some amazing talent, and the Lincoln Center and the New York Philharmonic and the New York City Ballet, and it's been a terrific amount. So we have mountain games coming up. Has everyone been to the mountain games? This is such a fascinating event for us. I'm probably not supposed to say this, but one of the things we're contemplating, the Vail Mountain Games has just done wonders for the community. It's just one of those kickoff of summer projects. It's fun for everyone. What it was 15 years ago was generally a bunch of dirtbag climbers that were sleeping in the parking structure and doing some kayaking. Now it's unbelievable. I mean, household incomes are crazy. The average stay is 3.2 days. I mean, it is a destination. Easily 50% come from across the United States and Canada. It's this destination project which we really feel lifts up our valley. The idea is to look at mountain games and expanding it. And, you know, think of the mountain games in Vail as, you know, the ultimate Hawaiian Ironman, which is the original. The idea would be to look at globally expanding that project to maybe 6 sites around the world: Auckland, Osaka, Chamonix, maybe somewhere in probably Canada, and then 1 or 2 in the United States. It gets complex because we're a 501c3. We have a clear mission that this county is what matters. The only reason to do it is if we felt that financially it could be stable and viable enough that us ultimately would be a subsidiary, it would kick net income back to the foundation that would be spent entirely here. So whatever it does, whatever money it could yield around the world, ultimately all those net incomes, those revenues would come back here and be executed exclusively in the programs in arts, culture, education, or other areas of need in this valley. So that's just something that we're contemplating right now. Obviously, we have had a very long relationship with Bravo Vail. They're amazing. Education. Everyone remember the last Alpine World Ski Championships, 2015? Mm-hmm. Yep, I got a little PTSD from it still. 4.5 years of my life. It was amazing, right? Our 3rd one. But there was, that time was transformational for the Vail Valley Foundation. Historically, when we came out of the 1989s and then the 1999s, the path of the organization, those projects are so big that as you're leading into them, you literally step back from a lot of the other things we do. Now, some of them just kind of maintain, but they're not really moving forward. They kind of go into a holding pattern. And in some cases, we have to discontinue projects in order for all the staff resources to be able to focus on something as big as the Champs. So we would, in 89, 99, we'd come out of those, and then we would end up launching all kinds of projects that were more what you'd think of as under the space of the athletics or economic driver part of the VBS mission. Well, for the first time in history, it was really kind of a momentous period. We asked ourselves a question: what is the most important thing we as the VVF can do to support this valley in the next 10 years? And it was resounding unanimous youth education. Those issues that exist in terms of the complexity of our education system in the county and the youth of our valley, we realized that that was paramount. So we doubled down, tripled down all of our time, resource, energy into Youth Power 365. And we feel it's made a lot of difference. We've been able to grow, call it participation in our programs by 200%. And these are kids that need it. Now, a lot of what we do under education is we are very clear about when are the kids at greatest risk and need. That's what drives everything we do. So we really don't operate during the school day. For us, everything we do is about after school and summer. And that's where we feel kids have the greatest risk of issues, or call it summer slide. So all of our programs are focused on helping these kids achieve greater academic performance, confidence, social, emotional well-being after school and summer. And we also, I'm going to talk about a new program we just launched. Youth Power 365 is what we call Cradle to Career. So we have programs that are operating as young as 2, 3 years old, which is again this kind of kindergarten readiness, getting ready for the school district, 1st grade. And then we go all the way through as these children matriculate up through primary education, middle school, junior high, high school. And some of our recent programs, maybe Chris mentioned it, we're part of this collaborative effort of answering a really big question. Is college for everyone? No. It tends to be the end zone, and that's kind of what most people say, but the reality is our graduation rates in this county are really poor. On the Hispanic male side, it's maybe 54% of graduating high school. It gets a little better for the young Hispanic women. They're probably around 56% graduation rate. But the point is, college isn't for everybody. And so we've implemented internships and apprenticeships and trade type training that by the time these kids are getting to 8th grade, 9th grade, we're starting to explore with them what their interests are, and then moving them towards training that can give them an amazing career after they graduate high school. And we think that will help. Are we going to swing the pendulum on the graduation rates from 50-something to 100? Probably not. But honestly, the power, if we in the next few years can move that needle from 50-some% to 75%, that's powerful. And get a few more of these talented young people. And part of one of the ways we do that is through a mentorship program. This is my pitch to all of you. If you feel you have the time, both on the boy-girl side, it's gender specific, but it's a mentorship program where professionals like yourself can work with these young kids, and it's an extension of the family and gives them something that can inspire them. And honestly, it's unbelievable. We think they know. They don't. They have no concept of what it takes to get a car or car insurance, or how do you open a checking account. Just basic life skills, or if you wanted to start your own business, how do you do that, right, as a young person? Or just, how do I fill out a FAFSA form? Anyone have kids that have gone to go through the FAFSA? I actually don't think I'm that stupid. Unbelievable, right? I mean, that was like 6 months of my wife and I tag teaming that process. So imagine if there's a language and a cultural issue. It gets very challenging. So the mentorship helps these kids kind of find their way. You've heard a lot about the mental and behavioral health issue, although that is not part of our primary, call it mission parameter. We deal with it every single day. We are serving hundreds and thousands of kids a year. They have very complex issues. Our staff every day is on the front lines of those problems. Suicide risk, suicide attention, prevention. So we are a big part of a lot of what Chris Lindley and Vail Health and the Eagle Valley Behavioral Health in terms of recognizing these issues early on. It's not the core thing we do. It's kind of one of those, it's going to take this whole valley to try to address that problem. The club, we've had a program called Girl Power forever. It's really successful, and what we love about it, it's the one program and kind of across all the different things we do. It does not matter if you're a 12, 13-year-old girl who goes to Vail Mountain School and lives in a $32 million house, or you're a 12, 13-year-old girl whose family's recently in this country and you live in a trailer park. Same problems. They face really similar complex issues, and it's broken down those barriers. So these young women come together under that one program, and it really doesn't matter what their backgrounds are. They are together and facing kind of a similar collective issue. What we realize is we cannot forget our fellas and the boys. We have had no problem to kind of address the complex issues of young men, boys. So it's called the club. We basically mirrored it a little bit after the successes of Girl Power, but it's very specific to what we believe these young people, males, need. And a lot of it is driven by an influence in their life outside of the family unit. That's super important. And just someone that can be there to help them, whether it's emotional crisis type stuff or what should my goals and dreams be, I want to be X, I don't even know how to begin, how do I even start that path. So this is a program we just launched. The good news is it's far exceeded our expectations in attendance. We're beyond capacity, and the only reason we can't add more boys is we don't have enough teachers and facilitators. So this is, we feel, a really great win for us in our valley. Youth Power 365, there's 3 areas. There's Power Up, it's all the early childhood. We have magic buses. You ever seen the magic buses that are out? Really exciting. I think in 2 months, we will have the first ever in North America fully electric mobile preschool. We did a capital campaign. It's fully electric. It's this unbelievably beautiful bus. The one we have right now is slightly better than the Partridge Family one. I dated myself there. So we'll be retiring these old buses, but the new buses really significant. It can serve more kids. It's much bigger. It's got workable water, bathrooms. So that's all under early childhood. Power Hours is always really, call it our Diet Coke brand of youth power. That's the main engine. That's after school summer. That's kind of kindergarten through 8th grade. That's been the main engine of our educational program. And one of the byproducts of Power Hours, although we're serving these kids, one of the other things it's done, the Vail Valley Foundation has 65 full-time year-round staff, and then we employ about 300 part-timers, and almost all of those are teachers. And if you just think of cost of living in this community, a Power Hours teacher can supplement their normal income by being a Power Hours teacher for us. And it adds somewhere between 10 to 12,000 in income a year for them to be part of Power Hours. So we think it's helping on a couple of levels. And then Power On is really all of our high school programs that are getting these young people through mentorship, career college readiness, apprenticeships, internships. Athletics, we can probably skip this because I know you guys gotta be done for the day. Birds of Prey is coming, fingers crossed. We need it to be 11 degrees for 30 hours sometime this week. It's all about snow. Pray for that. Actually, just a little insight for you. That course, the Birds of Prey course, is just this Herculean undertaking. What's natural snow is bad. We do not want it to snow. What we want is multiple days in a row where for at least 18 hours during those 24-hour periods, it's somewhere between 9 and 17 degrees. It's, I don't know how to, the exponent, if it's 26 degrees, you can turn all the guns on, run them for 12 hours, and you make a little bit of progress. You might get maybe a quarter of a football field filled with snow. If it's 9 to 17 degrees, you literally can cover that football field plus another. The production efficiency when it's cold. So another cocktail party trip. Anyway, we're looking forward to another great World Cup. We think this is an iconic part of our valley. It's part of our heritage. We are one of only 3 organizers in the world that have been running World Cups for 50 plus years. And although, in fact, we'll have a bit of a tribute, again, a small one. We've done a couple things for Pepe and Shaika and their family, but Pepe has really been instrumental in allowing this valley to have access to the World Cup. Whether, if you're asking, are you going to do another, anyone want to know? Are you going to do another Alpine World Ski Champs? Not sure. It's really complicated. We think the reason to do it is it is the one thing that is truly a rallying opportunity for every aspect of this valley. It is so big that it brings together everyone in the community. The tricky part is the reasons we did it early on was to really lift the economics and the worldwide, call it brands of this community. I don't think we need to do it for those reasons anymore. Vail, Beaver Creek, this valley are pretty sophisticated communities with worldwide brands. So I don't think we would do it for economic reasons again, but I think we would do it for community reasons. It's something. But if we were to do it, we probably need to dive into it pretty soon, probably by the spring of 21, because then we would bid and politic around the world for a year, and then we'd win some World Alpines. It's probably like 2031, 2033, it's way out there, but it's possible. Probably can skip the demographics. World Cup. One of the things we really need on Birds of Prey is they're in this redevelopment cycle right now. We need the U.S. ski team to have on the male side the Michaela. Right? That does all kinds of wonders. People have always said, well, why don't you host the women? Right? Just take the Women's World. It's a great idea. The problem is, and this is not fair for ladies in the room, if you look at the global World Cup, men's, women's, 2/3 of all of it is paid for by the commercial rights on the men's side. So it's still the same cost to run a Women's World Cup, but you get 2/3 less of the rights and sponsor money. It's not fair. It's changing. in terms of equal pay, equal rights in sport for women's disciplines, but we're not quite there yet. Our goal is actually to bring men and women together in a, what we call kind of a mini World Cup finals structure. It would still be in early December, but the idea would be to bring women's racing and men's racing together either in 4 or 5 days of racing where you run men in the morning, women in the afternoon, or over 2 weekends that are back to back. So that's a goal of ours. We've put in our request to the FIS and the governing bodies, but it'll probably take a few years before we know. We talked about mountain games. We can kind of skip through that. I think we're at it. Yeah, thank you. Questions? Is that good? Did I go too fast? You want me to keep going? You guys are done? Any Q&A?
Mike, one question. Just since you're one of the bigger nonprofits in the Valley, you've been around a long time, you've done a phenomenal job. How do you, your budget, how is it similar versus differentiated between all the other nonprofits? Like in the Valley, since we have quite a large amount of nonprofits from a variety, but where are you similar and where are you differentiated compared to the other nonprofits?
You mean
where the money's coming in? Where are you getting most of
in
your
terms
money?
of our size?
Well, just, where are you getting your money in comparison to other nonprofits?
Oh, I would say
Corporate, big corporate sponsors?
no, no, by far. By far, the majority of the revenue that comes into our organization are individual donors that believe in the mission. Now, some pay into the Vail Valley Foundation because they just care deeply about everything we just talked about. However, a lot of donors are very specific. They really only want to give to education. And a lot of them can get pretty deep into, they're very generous, but for them, they see all the value in early childhood. And they look at it as a return on investment. If I have $10,000 as a donor to give, I feel my dollars spent in early childhood before their 3rd grade has the greatest power of impact. Others believe that the high school programs are most important. Others believe the Lamar Center is the only thing they'll ever give to. But individual donors, now, yeah, corporate sponsorship comes in, but only because we have things like mountain games and birds of prey. It's a commercial return on investment. Those companies don't do it for philanthropic reasons. The donors, though, they do it for philanthropy reasons. And then second only to the individual donors would be institutional funding. Large organizations that believe in our mission and grant us money, like another large foundation that has programs that are driving early childhood, we may get a grant from them. And I think that's true for most nonprofits in this valley. What's interesting, we've been around since 1981. 30 years ago, there was probably 15 nonprofits in this valley. I would bet we're nearing 400 today. Now, a lot of them are quite small, but they're all doing great work. And so it's become a more complicated marketplace, for sure. Please.
Now that Golden Peak Race Course has been expanded, any thoughts about bringing some of the World Cup races over to Vail Village?
Yeah, that's a great question. The problem with Golden Peak is no problem. It's amazing for Ski Club Vail, but the expansion in the upper arena section, the problem is it's twofold. It would not work for the men's, but it could work for Women's World Cup. But the caliber of women's races today, it may not be hard enough. It is amazing for the youth development, but to think of Michaela and races at that level, it may only be viable for maybe a Super G. The bigger issue we face is when you look at all the rights holders in the FIS and the teams themselves, it's hard for them to go look at racing in Gold Peak when they have, within 10 minutes, the Birds of Prey, which is arguably next to Kitzbühel, the greatest World Cup ski racing course on planet Earth. So the caliber of competitive, what Birds of Prey, or the Raptor course, the one we built specifically for the women in the last championships, the caliber of those courses compared to Gold Peak, they're the pinnacle. So it'd be hard for them to come all the way to the United States, come all the way to Colorado, and look at racing in Gold Peak when they have access to the venues just a few miles down valley. The bigger issue is really, it could only be tech, probably, maybe a GS slalom, but even with the upper arena, for the women, it might not be hard enough, might not be steep enough. I think where it would work is if we could get something really early season on the calendar. I think Gold Peak would be a great way to have a super early season, early November race over in Gold Peak. But it'd be just for the women. Thank you.